I would request that the Board of Commissioners consider a budget amendment in the amount of $13,392 to be taken from contingency and to authorize the county to make a payment to the retirement system on behalf of an employee who is injured and as a result of that workers' compensation claim is attempting to purchase retirement credit that he lost while he was out on workers' compensation. And the finance officer would prepare a proper budget amendment and authorize us to make that payment, please.
We'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Let the record show is unanimous. Thank you, Mike. You did a lot better job explaining. He said you explained that, so I don't know what you're talking about. So, I handle their insurance and stuff. Thank you, Mike. Very well said. Next item on the agenda, announcements. Anybody got an announcement?
Chairman Higdon, I've got an announcement, or maybe it's a recommendation, but I want to second your comments there to Mr. Sherrill and Mr. Antoine. Welcome to the board, and I want to welcome back Commissioner Shields. I also want to welcome Ms. Deidre Breeden and Stephanie Laster to the school board. I see Sheriff Holbrook is there as well. We've got a lot of moving parts and pieces within our school system. And just looking at a couple notes I have here, we've got some renovations at the Highlands High School, renovations at Highlands Middle School, our Franklin High School, Nantahala School, East Franklin School. We're building a athletic facility at the Macon Middle School. I know I'm forgetting something here. East Franklin, we're doing some kind of expansion, and we're also in discussion with Highlands Pre-K. I think it would be wise, or maybe our board would consider a joint meeting with the school board. We'll have 4 new elected officials to 2 different boards, and I think it would be nice to have an interactive, meeting where we can kind of put everybody's minds together and we can discuss maybe moving forward with some planning as a team. And I just want to reach out to the school board and say I look forward to working with you and building our relationship along with many other boards. So I don't know if that's an announcement or maybe a recommendation, but there's my 2 cents.
Brilliant idea.
And Dr. Baldwin's with us. We do have, speaking of the Franklin High School project, especially, I know that's moving forward, and we're now coming to a place where we need to discuss next steps. Would it make sense, do you think the school board would be willing to meet sometime before the Christmas holiday, maybe the 20th?
I can certainly find out.
Okay. Maybe tentatively, the 20th, we'd be happy to host it here in the courtroom.
I'll see what I do about the schedule on that.
Okay. And we will, if so, Mr. Chairman, we'll announce and advertise a special meeting for that.
And at what time in the day?
It would be the normal time, 6
6
o'clock.
o'clock?
Because we have a meeting at 1:30.
Don't need any action on that. Proceed, right?
Dr. Baldwin and I'll get together, and if that's good with the school board, then we'll call a special meeting, and they'll call a special meeting
It'll be next Monday night,
next Tuesday.
next Tuesday night. Okay. I think it's a good plan. Anybody else? Next item, let's all stand for a moment of silence, and then Commissioner Shields lead us in Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance.
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Next item is public hearings, and we have 3 of those. I think Mr. Warren Cave has the honor of the first 2.
Actually, this
Mr. Chairman, we're not required to have a public hearing for those two subleases. We just had to post a notice, because if we stay under 10 years, we don't have to do that. So we can move that whole business if you like.
Take her off the agenda. Good deal.
We'll move it to old business.
Oh, the old business?
Yeah, we'll just
Oh, we still need to discuss it, okay.
discuss it. We'll make that items C and D under old business.
All right. Macon County Community Transportation Program Application, Transit Director, Darlene Asher. Welcome, Darlene.
Good evening.
This is a public hearing.
Yes, it is. I'm here to have a public hearing on our FY24 capital grant. We are asking to apply for 6 replacement vehicles, one of which is a 20-foot LTV with a lift, 5 high-top vans with lifts. 3 of those vans were scheduled to be replaced in FY22, but because of COVID, we didn't get the vans, we weren't able to procure them. We are getting 4 of those vans this year, but the other 3 we're not gonna get until FY24. We're asking for propane kits to be outfitted on all those vehicles, the lettering, and 10 new radio systems for those vans, and 2 desktop replacement computers, and a laptop and an overhead projector for training. The total of this grant would be $674,392. The grant is a 20% match, which the state asked for the county to do $137,879.
And this is something we do every year.
Yes, it's our capital grant. All the vehicles that we are replacing reach their mileage life as of June 30th of this year. Some of these vehicles have over 180,000 miles on them, so.
And who decides what type? I notice, if you go to remote areas, Vernon Town, Tillico. do you go
We buy
down?
off state contract. Most of the state contract right now are Fords, the Ford Transits.
The dualies, or,
Yes, we prefer the dual wheels. Our drivers prefer the dual wheels in the rear because of where we go, the driveways and the roads that we carry. The 4 that we're getting next month are not dual wheel. We had to take what we could get, unfortunately. That's why we only got 4 instead of the 7.
do you run to Nanahaven? And this is a little out of tone for a public hearing, but we're all family here.
Yes,
Do you run to Nanahaven any at all?
yes. When we have a medical appointment over there. We used to run a shopping van over there for years, but it dwindled down to where we didn't have anybody. So, and we couldn't get anybody else to ride. We tried reaching out, but they just weren't interested.
What happens to the vans once they've been replaced?
They are sold on gov deals,
And we get the money to put?
back into transit. Yeah, because right now DOT holds all the titles until we get ready to sell.
I didn't mean to interrupt your
That's fine.
presentation.
Anybody else have any questions?
We've been doing this for how many years?
Since the conception of transit. 22?
22
22.
years?
Yes.
Need a motion?
Yes.
What's the pleasure of the board?
We
Your motion?
Pardon?
Close the hearing.
You got to close the hearing.
Oh,
Public comments about that.
okay.
There's nobody signed up. So.
Nobody signed up? Motion to close? Motion to close the public hearing?
Yes.
Second?
Yes.
All in favor, aye, no discussion? All right. Now we need action to approve, right?
Yes,
What's the pleasure
the
of the board?
resolution.
Chairman Higgs and I make a motion, we
collects $137,000 as requested by the transit director.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand, saying aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene. All right. Public comment period. Y'all met our new sheriff, Brent Holbrooks, I hope. Yes, sir. All right, we have a public comment. George McClure on pickleball courts. George McClure, come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm George McClure, and I represent the ever-growing pickleball community in Franklin. And we just wanted to express our appreciation for the board's ongoing support of our efforts to get dedicated courts in the city. As some of you might know, pickleball is, I think for the second year in a row, the fastest-growing sport in the country. And it's really exploding in Franklin as well. I have about 170 people on the email list, and I add people on a regular basis. And if we can get these permanent courts that have permanent nets, it will allow working people to be able to play after work and on weekends. Right now, it's been sort of confined to retired folks, and this way will open it up greatly. And the other thing I think this is going to happen is that I'm assuming it's going to move into the schools pretty soon, because the average age of pickleball players is getting younger and younger as every year goes by. So I think it'd be a great thing for the city to have these courts. There's some evidence that people, when deciding where to relocate or retire, believe it or not, consider pickleball as a factor. And having these courts there on the site that's been proposed by Seth Adams, right off the Georgia Road across from Ingalls, would be a pretty good advertisement for the sport and a good advertisement for the city, I think. What we're trying to do with my group is to raise private money to sort of complement the project with some amenities, particularly a pavilion, so people can get out of the sun during the summer. And we'll probably also try to fund a concrete apron leading up to the courts. So our efforts so far have been three-pronged. We're relying on private donations from people in our group. We've got some corporate donations that have already come in, and we're going to be applying for some grants. So that's sort of our plan to try to complement what the county has allocated for the courts. But in general, I would just like to, we'd like to express our gratitude that the county and the board has been very helpful in the past. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you,
Okay.
George. Mary Ann Ingram.
A pass, thank you very much. And congratulations to all of the new folks up here. Beautiful to see your faces.
Good deal. All right, that closes our public comment period. Additions to agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I have an addition.
Write that down to the chairman, please.
Do you have to withdraw your 12K?
Oh, well, on the addition or the adjustments.
Okay, then on 12K, like I had the liaison selection process, I make on count, I make it, it's in your place, is that? You withdrawn
Yeah.
on 12K, new business.
Well, when we get over to adjustments two and approval of the agenda, I'm going to put off 12K till next month.
Then I'll add to the new business, the liaison.
Oh, you want to replace 12K with
Liaison selection process.
12K?
Okay.
It's a good replacement. Go ahead, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, if we could please, under appointments, could we add item 14D to consider a reappointment to the Social Services Board? And I can explain a little bit more about that at that point.
Social services.
Yes, sir.
How many on the board?
There's 3 total we were still looking at.
Why don't we wait just a minute there, Mr. Shields, additions. Does anybody else have any additions to the agenda? Okay, I had an item on the agenda, the next line on the agenda is adjustments to and approval of the agenda. I don't know what the difference is in the addition or adjustments, but 12K had to, go ahead, Michael.
For what it's worth, sir, in your rules of procedure, those are 2 separate items, and that's why they're listed as such on the agenda.
I've never been one much for procedure, Michael. Adjustments to and approval of the agenda. Now, we had on there, just to fill in the public, each year, when we get new board members, it's kind of like snowballs. The way I've been here 10 years. When we get a new member and that snowball's turning, they just throw that new guy on it and he gets caught up in it. It's the same thing, same cycle. Not being derogatory or saying anything negative to anybody. But we are appointed up here to different liaison positions throughout the county. And this time we thought, well, let's do this a little different. Let's find out, number one, what is required by general statute for us to serve as liaisons, because some funding is dependent upon us serving as a member of the board. So Derek, county manager, Tammy, all the same crew, they've worked diligently for the last few weeks coming up with a proposed liaison appointment list. They've gone through every liaison that's been accumulated over the years and put whether it's required by general statute, the current liaison member, and then a comment period. We're not saying we're doing away with any liaison, but we don't know what is physically required by law. So, Derek, thank you guys. I mean, you guys put a lot of time in getting ready, because we've been throwing some stuff at him and just wondering what if, and doggone, he comes back with a document supporting that what if. So, we were going to appoint, generally, we appoint the liaisons, the new chair generally appoints the liaisons in December. But since this is still a work in progress, it's not an emergency, I'm going to remove my discussion of the liaison appointments. I'm going to put it off until next month. But Mr. Shields, you want to discuss some of that?
Oh, I have a recommendation to read for the liaison selection process. This is point of information.
We want to add that. Okay, we'll,
You added in K or?
well, if we're taking K
We'll
off.
just replace 12K with
Okay.
what it is. We'll replace it with liaison selection
Okay.
process. And also, Mr. Chairman, let's remember the lease with Sutton Broadcasting and the lease with Blue Ridge Broadcasting are going to become 11C and D.
Okay. And we've got the good folks of Nantahala over here tonight. And I would like to move them from 11B to 11A and A to B. Because Jack Morgan lives right out the road here, and he's got a short drive. But the folks from Nantahala like to leave as early as they could to get back. Can we do that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And thank y'all for coming. One of these days, you're gonna have a community club and a library over there. Anybody else got any adjustments? We'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Chairman.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please signify approval by raising your right hand, stating aye. All right. Reports and presentations. 10B. No, wait a minute here. We're gonna do, did we move to 11B to 11A? All right, we have the Starnes and Associates. We'll let them go. Melanie, I was gonna try to get you switched up there, but you can wait a minute. It's Claire Chase, right?
Yes, sir. Good
It's
evening.
Claire Chase with Martin Starnes and Associates, CPAs. Each year we're required by statute to have an audit of government operations, and this is the lady representing the firm that does that, Martin and Starnes. Martin Starnes and Associates.
Martin Starnes and Associates.
Close enough.
All right, I'm Claire Chase, and I was the senior on this year's audit engagement, and I'm here to present to you the 2022 Annual Financial Report. For some audit highlights, we issued an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion we can issue. And I'm also very happy to report that there was cooperative staff. Lori and all of her staff worked really hard to get us what we need, and we really appreciated that and worked well together. For the total fund balance of the general fund, in 2021, the fund balance was $37.8 million. This increased by $6.1 million to $44 million in 2022. This increase was 16.3%, so total revenues exceeded expenditures by $8.9 million, but after other financing sources and uses, lease liabilities issues of $174,000, transfers in of $1.6 million, and transfers out of $4.6 million. This left the general fund with an increase in fund balance of $6.1 million. Additional information on the fund balance in the general fund. Total fund balance was $44 million, less non-spendable of $459,000, less your stabilization by state statute of $5.2 million, for an available fund balance of $38 million. This was an increase compared to 2021 of $32 million, for a $5.7 million increase. Your available fund balance is the calculation utilized as the basis for comparing you to other units and calculating your fund balance percentages. I also wanted to note here that your non-spendable includes inventory, prepaids, and notes receivable. The increase in your available fund balance from prior year is due to an increase in that total fund balance that we discussed on the previous slide. So for your available fund balance plus your debt service fund balance, in 2021, this amount was $34.8 million. Your total expenditures and transfers out, less your lease liabilities, was $51.4 million, for an available fund balance over net expenditures percentage of 67%, compared to 2022 available fund balance plus debt service fund balance of $42 million, over your total expenditures and transfers out, less lease liabilities of $56.6 million, for an available fund balance percentage of 74%. So the county LGC minimum fund balance available percentage is 20% for units with general fund expenditures below $100 million. I do want to note that there is no required fund balance available percentage, but this is just a useful percentage for comparing you to other units. For your general fund summary of revenues and expenditures, so your revenues increased from $57.5 million to $61.1 million. Your expenditures also increased from $49.9 million to $52.2 million. I do want to note that the above numbers do not include other financing sources and uses such as transfers and lease liabilities. So your revenues increased by 6%, or about $3.6 million, and your expenditures increased by 4.5%, or about $2.2 million. For your top three revenues in the general fund, so the largest portion is your ad valorem taxes at 55%, followed by the local option sales tax at 21%, then restricted intergovernmental revenues at 14%, and other revenues makes up the remaining 10%. Other revenues includes things like unrestricted intergovernmental, permits and fees, sales and services, investment income, and then miscellaneous revenues. So your top three comprise $55 million, or about 90% of your revenues. I'm going to discuss these on the next few slides. For your ad valorem taxes, so this increased from $31.2 million in 2021 to $33.8 million in 2022. This is a $2.6 million, or 8.5% increase, and this was due to the increase in the tax rate. For your restricted intergovernmental revenues, this decreased slightly from $9 million in 2021 to $8.6 million in 2022. This is a $416,000 or 4.6% decrease, but we would consider this comparable to prior year. For the local option sales taxes, this increased from $11.1 million in 2021 to $12.6 million in 2022. This is a $1.5 million increase, or 13.9%, and this was due to an increase in taxable sales and purchases within the county. For your top 3 expenditures in the general fund, the largest portion is made up of public safety, coming in at 33%, human services at 22%, and education at 20%. And then the remaining is made up of other expenditures at 25%, which includes things like general government, transportation, economic and physical development, cultural and recreation, and debt service payments. So your top 3 expenditures comprise $39 million, or about 75% of your expenditures. Public safety expenditures increased from $14.1 million in 2021 to $16.9 million in 2022. So this is a $2.7 million increase, or 19.7%. And this was due to increases in salaries and benefits and capital outlay. Human services expenditures increased from $10.7 million in 2021 to $11.6 million in 2022. This is an $882,000 increase, or 8.2%, due to various increases in human services programs, such as the LEAP program. For education expenditures, this increased slightly from $10.3 million in 2021 to $10.4 million in 2022. This was an increase of $79,000, or less than 1%, so it's comparable to prior year. For the enterprise fund, solid waste fund, in 2021, the cash amount was $12.8 million. There was a GAAP net loss of $20,000, a cash basis net income of $342,000, cash flow from operations of $1.9 million, and an unrestricted net position of $411,000. In 2022, the cash was $13.9 million. The GAAP net loss was $276,000. The cash basis net income was $1 million. The cash flows from operations was $2 million, and the unrestricted net position was negative $18,000. So the GAAP net income decreased over prior year. The cash basis net income increased over prior year, and the unrestricted net position decreased over prior year. So please note that the cash basis net income does not include things such as depreciation, changes in post-closure costs, and other post-employment benefits, but it does include your capital outlay and debt service payments. The current year's is higher than the prior year due to an increase in operating revenues. The GAAP net income decrease is mainly due to a prior year capital contribution that did not occur in the current year. Cash flows from operations remain comparable to prior year. And then your unrestricted net position, so this is like available fund balance in the general fund. This is the portion of equity in the solid waste fund that the board can use to appropriate. So this decrease of $400,000 is due to the increase in the other net position component. That's the net investment in capital assets. So as a result of all those items, the net position for the solid waste fund decreased by that $276,000. Lastly, I have some general performance indicators to discuss with you. This is something new that we started discussing last year in fiscal year 21. So this comes from the data input sheet, and that's a template that we submit to the LGC along with the audit report. And it's just based on financial statement information. You enter information from the financial statements onto the template, and then performance indicators could pop up, and that they would be a red flag. So I am required to discuss with you that there was one red flag noted for the one significant deficiency finding. So this was for a lack of controls over cash collections at a department in the county, where there were inherent limitations to the segregation of duties among personnel relating to cash receipts. On another note, I'm happy to report that there was a timely audit submission and stable property tax valuation and collection percentage. Sorry. That's it for my presentation. Are there any questions?
I'll start. I've got several, but I'll ask two questions, and I guess they're both an opinion. I'm asking for your opinion.
I may not be able to give it, but.
Maybe with some findings that you see with other counties of our size and how we relate to other counties. I see on here we spend 33% of our budget into public safety, 20% of our budget in education. How do you see those ratios compared to our budget as other counties, in our region? 20% of our budget goes to education, 33 law enforcement. How do you?
I would say that typically across the board, public safety is one of the largest percentages. So I would say you're comparable to other units with that. And then every unit is different as far as your needs. So if you're building a new school, for example, obviously your education expenditures will be much more elevated than another unit. So it just depends on the projects and what is going on with the county or municipality. So
I guess I'm just making sure our numbers are kind of within the boundaries. And the other was, how do you see our ad valorem tax rate as it relates to our budget compared to others? So I think it was 55% of our budget is comprised of ad valorem. Is that consistent with what you see, or is
again,
that?
I would say ad valorem is the largest percent of revenues I see across the board.
Sure.
So.
Anybody else got any questions?
All right.
Got a pretty good crew taking care of our money, don't we?
Absolutely. I really enjoyed working with Lori. So.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you so much for allowing us to be your auditors.
I guess that contract will come up. When does that come up?
Well, I might leave before you discuss that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Claire. And thank you, Lori, and your staff for getting us through it again. We handle a lot of money here. We run about a $60 million budget, and you got to have qualified people to do it. All right. Miss Melanie Tebow, Macon County Board of Elections Director. We just went through an election recently, and we got to interact with Melanie occasionally, and just thought it'd be nice.
I'll
if she
correct
came
you,
and-
it's Tebow, like TBO.
T-ball.
I wished I could change the spelling of it.
Yeah,
No one
no.
can pronounce it correctly.
But we wanted her to come and just give us an update and her assessment of the recent election.
Well, thank you for having me. I'll start out this evening by saying again to congratulations, Mr. Sherrill, Mr. Antoine, and Mr. Shields. Glad to have you here, and newly appointed chairman, Mr. Higdon. Congratulations to all of you. I don't have any wise words of wisdom tonight, but I will say this. Most of us here in this room tonight were born and raised in Macon County. We take a lot of pride in that. So much so that we chose to raise our families here, and now we're watching our families raise our grandchildren here. And I just hope that all of you guys can put any differences aside and come together as a board and work together in, making decisions that are going to make Macon County grow and be a better place for our grandchildren and their children to grow up in. So you have an important job up there. Mr. Higdon asked me to come tonight to give an overview of the election. We just had in November. As of election day, Macon County had almost 28,000 registered voters. In this election, we saw 15,903 voted in this election, so that's about 57% of the voters voted in this election. We had 8,921 that voted early during the 17 days we had early voting. 6,121 voted on election day. and 816 of those were absentee by mail. Those were mail-in ballots. We completed our 30-day sort last week with no discrepancies. I don't know if you know what a 30-day sort is, but there's audits that we have in the office that have to be run that most people aren't aware of. We have 30 days after an election is canvassed to run all of those ballots back through the machines, make sure that the numbers come out correct, make sure they are what they reported on election day, and they all came out with no discrepancies. Zero. Compared to 2018, we had a little over 15,000. We actually had 15,515 voted in that election, which is about 59% in that election. Something a little different in this election, which was nice. It used to be done in the past years on election day, but it wasn't really done during early voting. We had a lot of observer participation in this election. That's kind of, for some reason or another, that's kind of fallen off to the wayside, and it's just not being done. And that's even before COVID. I've not seen a lot of participation, at the precincts on election day or during early voting. We've never had it at early voting. It was done this year. We had observers every day from open to close during early voting, and they were all stationed at precincts across Macon County on election day. So I hope that we encouraged, observers and the participation, and for voters to participate more, in our elections and be involved. I hope that they all left, this election with more knowledge in the process and the guidelines that we follow. And I hope that they saw that we all go above and beyond to try to make sure that our elections are safe, secure, and accurate. I also wanted to let you know that we are in the next process of the voting equipment. We will be doing the next process is a simulated election that we will have to do. It's basically an election that will go for 3 to 4 days. And it's just like having a regular election. It'll just be done with the office staff, some poll workers, a couple of members from the state board will be here, and representatives from Hart, from the new company that we're purchasing our equipment. Hart will be here. They're flying in from Houston to Asheville on Monday, the 23rd. So Tuesday, here in the Board of Elections office, we'll be doing some training and going over some of the processes that we're going to do. Then we'll set the equipment up out at the community building, because as you know, the Board of Elections office doesn't have the room to hold these in our office. These have to be public, so it is, I have to advertise for it. We hope that you guys, if you can come, stick your head in the door, watch. I encourage you to, or voters, anyone. This will be public. I'll be putting notices in the Franklin Press and most of the newspapers, and I will announce it. We'll begin on Wednesday, the 25th at 9 o'clock. And it's basically, we'll have all of the equipment set up. Pre-marked ballots will be run through all of these machines, just like a normal election. That will go on for 2 days. We hope to be done by Thursday. And then everything will be brought back here to the office and uploaded to the state, and make sure that all of that works. Hart is going to ship our equipment the first week of January, the equipment that's going to be used in the simulated election, not our equipment. And then after that, the next step would be to send our information to the state board as to what you and the board recommend, the equipment that we want to purchase, and get an approval from the state board. I've been, Eric, with you, I've been back and forth with emails with the contract, and I have sent your recommendations to Hart, and they are, as we speak, working on making those changes. And I'm supposed to have those changes by next week. So I will send those to you as soon as I get them. I'll send you and Derek the copy of those. There was some changes that he saw in the contract that needed to be changed, so they're working with us to make those changes. Any questions?
Good deal. Thank you, and the Board of Elections for getting us through another one.
Yes, sir. Hope to get through more.
You got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Can you all hear from this microphone back there? Pardon? Yeah? Okay. I'm sitting here and can't hear, so. Old business, item number 11 on your agenda, update on the Nantahala Library Community Center, Mr. Jack Morgan. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome new members and newly elected old ones and old ones. Glad to see everybody here and look forward to working with all of y'all on these projects. I was tasked with coming up with a budget for the Nantahala Library and Community Club renovation at 36 White Oak in Compton, North Carolina, and this is the results of those. It's itemized.
You got any leftovers there?
Yeah, basically.
You got 'em?
Let me get back. The Nantahala guys.
Yeah.
All right. The total with contingency to renovate this building into what the library wants and what the community club wants will cost about $258,940. At 2,400 square foot building, that costs about $107 a square foot, but it will be first class. And like I said, it's itemized. If you have questions or you want me to discuss them, however you guys want to do that. But what I'm looking for now is direction on what you want me to do next.
Well, we appreciate you bringing it to this point. We've got 6 people here from Nantahala tonight, I think. There was some discussions about the requirement of having an architect in on this project. Have we?
We've looked at that, and the state grant funding, I reached out to the Southwestern Commission, who the grant money from the state's flowing through. While there is no requirement that we would have an architect, Jack, when did MHA say they could start? The issue that we've talked about, the issue that we've discussed, is the scope of work and how we're going to define the scopes of work for these various disciplines of construction. Having an architect would enable us to put that scope of work in a plan where there is no second guessing what's to be done on that scope of work. And that's kind of covers us as well as moving forward. And that's what Lori and I have discussed. Now, we can certainly move without an architect because the architect is going to cost about $28,000.
$28,000.
If I remember, to do this job. And that's basically what that architect would do is oversee the plans and specifications, oversee the construction process. You know, of course, we'll have Jack there as boots on the ground conducting the inspections and being the liaison for the county. But we can certainly proceed without an architect. While we have $300,000 in state funding available to do this project, we're playing with house money. We got a $23,500 contingency built in. We can put an architect on this project and stay within the state funds that we have available, that are directed only to be used for the renovation project over there. So with the budget coming in the way it did, and we're not strapped for funds because the state is going to give us $300,000 to do this project, I would ask that the board maybe consider using an architect. Just so we can have those scopes of work, have everything clean, have the bids clean, and without us trying to put something together and put the bids out and review the bids. That's what you pay that architect for. So that, again, we can certainly do it either way, but I would just ask the board to consider that after discussing it with finance and kind of the,
And these are costs, these aren't contractor costs. This is what these individual subcontractors would do it for the county for. Need to mention, though, if you get an architect, which is not a bad idea, but that's up to you gentlemen to decide. If he puts it out to bid and gets a general contractor, there will probably be a fee on top of this. The contractor's not going to do it for cost.
right, and we wouldn't have a GC, we would do it like we did on the Robert C. Carpenter building, where we broke it down and we bid out the HVAC, we bid out the plumbing, the electric. We just had, in that instance, Tom Ritter drew up all those bid specs. When those contractors were responding to us, they were responding to a set of plans that had drawings on them of what to be done. So, right now, what we would be doing is we would be writing a scope of work for the electric and the plumbing rather than having a set of drawings that contractor can respond to.
What do you think, Jack? Because if we wait on an architect, that's gonna be,
When was the start date?
They could start in March, but he wouldn't be ready for bid till toward the end of, no, they could start in January, but
Yeah,
the
I
bids wouldn't be ready for bid till toward the end of March.
and what's our gamble if you've done this is not your first rodeo on buildings. And I was showing that community building out there, that was a $1 million project, wasn't it close?
Yeah.
And you kind of ramrodded that one.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've done this before, but again, it's up to the commissioners to decide how you want to do it. This method of the county being the contractor without the architect is a lot more work for finance, legal, and so you got to pay somebody.
Well, it's
Your
work that
architect.
we don't have the capacity to do. I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer. I can't prepare plans and specifications, We prepare bid documents, but I
Right.
can't prepare plans and specs of what HVAC or electrical work needs to be done. And the other risk you run, Jack's estimates are right at 260,000 with contingency. If this project costs 300,000 or more, by general statute, you're required to have an architect prepare plans and specs. So, there's that inherent risk.
And that's what happened at the Carpenter building. It went over that threshold and we had to go back and formally bid everything. And like Lori said, yes, Jack was the boots on the ground at that project, but we had Tom Ritter that drew up the specs to be bid out for each of these disciplines.
We did bid them out, we did the owner-builder affidavit, and we bid them out, like Derek was saying, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, whatever work was needed, but we did have the assistance of an architect on that project.
And we
And it
will
definitely
still,
snowballed in cost, because it did probably reach close to $900,000, when it was all said and done.
Yeah.
And, we went into that with a much lower number, so.
We really miss Tom. We really miss Tom Ritter
yes.
Yeah, we
at
do.
times like this,
Definitely.
not just as a person, but
Yes.
he did the county so many favors
He did.
that he wouldn't charge for some work that these guys. We got estimates on architects anywhere from $28,000 to $78,000 on this project. And that's for doing minimum amount of work and me doing most of their legwork and being their eyes and ears on the job. Is $28,000 is the best we got.
Jack, one of my concerns, these prices that you have received, are they contractors willing to do the work?
Yeah.
I was talking with the transit there, and they've set their $300,000 project out for bid, I think 3 times.
Yes.
And there's a construction company out of Cherokee that I think is going to, by default, take on the project, but if we hire an architect, do we have to hire a general contractor?
no.
No.
So the county still acts as their own independent
Yeah, we'll still be the
contractor.
contractor. We'll be bidding out a bid, we'll put out a bid for HVAC, we'll put out a bid for plumbing, we'll put out a bid for the
So
electric.
what you're saying is we need somebody to draft a clear, expectation of
Right.
scope.
That architect's gonna put those plans together that we can put to that HVAC person that says, okay, here's what I'm bidding on.
I don't disagree with that. It's a lot of money for,
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
It took me this long, I was supposed to be back last month, it's taken me this long to get people that would even meet with me over there and to discuss the project.
Don't
And
worry about it.
so that's how this came about. These people, I feel confident that the ones we've talked to and they've given us these cost estimates would certainly be willing to do the work.
Heavenly.
Didn't we have to go through this already? Didn't you get an architect? They gave you a plan, then they said they won't do it,
Yeah.
and all that sort of thing?
They
I
back,
mean,
they backed out on it.
right, they backed out on you. Now, I don't know that you had a guy, he was the low bid guy anyway, and he won't do the job, and we're still waiting.
I heard this same conversation over a year ago,
Yeah.
right here.
I mean, it's been that
We're
long.
still out in the
We're
cold.
confident, I mean, the Nantahala folks, at least I am confident that they can handle this. It's not a huge building, it's not a huge, I mean, not that $300,000 is not a big amount of money, but we'd like to see some results. You guys have said go,
And before y'all came,
let's go,
I had a meeting with him over, and I said, you're dealing with the government. This ain't gonna be overnight.
right, and we know
And
that.
you're witnessing that,
Yeah,
so.
and we know it's not overnight, but it has been quite some time, many years, to get just to this point. And now we've got the money, let's get going.
Does it have to be an architect, engineer can't do it?
There does not have to be, no.
Jack, you gotta go, this is your life, you've been doing this all your life.
It's,
These folks, they're like me, they're getting old. We keep kicking can down the road,
they run out of road.
run out of road.
Yeah, we
You feel
will.
confident, Jack, drafting the scope? I mean, is this something that, if we didn't overload Lori, could we contract you to do this?
I'll do the best I can to my ability.
I mean, if it was anybody but Jack standing up there, I'd hesitate,
Oh,
but.
He knows what he's doing.
I
And he knows,
appreciate your confidence.
you know most of these people,
Met every one of them. I know them.
Just keep in mind, if we put it out to bid though, and it's over 300,000,
Yeah.
we're gonna be backing up and punting and having to hire an architect
Yeah.
to then in turn prepare plans and specs.
we're at 235 proposed cost. I mean, if we wait till, if he can't start on to March, or he starts on, the architect told, what was the dates?
They would put it out for bid in March, late March.
Put it out for bid in March, and that's, by the time we get it, it'll be the end of the summer, won't it? I mean,
Yeah, it'll probably be up in winter before we get finished. About 6 months to get everybody rounded up. Because it is not a halo. People are not going to drop what they're doing to run over there.
you couldn't get him to go give you an estimate, could you?
It was difficult.
So if we've got people on the line, if we've got nibbles, I mean, if there's no great liability issues, I like to see, I don't like to talk about things, I like to see things happen. And like the library, they've been talking about the library for 14 years, it's about time. And I hate to inconvenience anybody, but what's the pleasure of the board? I mean, I don't want to be the odd duck up here, but I like to see things happen.
So Jack, when are these people ready to move all of your,
Some of them could move pretty quickly. Some of them would need a couple of months to get there. And you can't send everybody over here to do this at one time anyway. It's got to be steps. We need to do, so we have to cut up some concrete for some plumbing. We have to build some walls inside. So there's steps to take, but we could schedule most people where it would be, I would hope, almost seamless from start to finish. That would have somebody there working most of the time.
And we'll still have to bid these components out.
Yeah.
Whether we have an architect or not.
Yeah.
You know, by statute, we have to bid this out.
Have you got time to act as an architect and a general contractor on behalf of the county?
I can't act as an architect. I don't have a license for that.
Well, essentially, I mean, that's what, can you draft a scope of this work?
I will do my best, Mr. Young, to fill those duties, if that's what the board pleases.
and you don't see any unforeseen problems with this building and stuff?
We looked at it every way we could. The building, it's a sound building. It just takes some work to get it to what the community club and the Nantahala Library needs.
And which of these do we have to put out for bid, Lori?
All of it.
Yeah, we put all components out for bid. As we spoke earlier, we'll separate it by HVAC, plumbing, electrical.
And you had this much trouble just getting one bid.
Well, you know, it's an exercise to get bids, and you just do the best you can. And these are different times to what we've been accustomed to in the past for bidding. Most contractors will just like the bus barns, what I call it, that building. The first guy said, well, $405,000, but I can't get to it this year, maybe next year, maybe not. So that's the thing. Anybody that's busy and will work is pretty doggone busy. So getting somebody over there is a chore in itself. Some of these guys are from over that direction, so they take some pride in that, and they'll be Johnny on the spot. Some of them I got to bring from Highland, some of them got to bring from Silva, some of them got to bring from Andrews.
And the longer we wait, this is not cast in stone. Maybe that's what, good, how many days, 30, 60 days?
Yeah, usually 30 days without a commitment.
Depends on what the economy does, we can't predict that.
Cannot.
What you do is probably you'll put it out to bid, you'll put it out electric, you'll put out the plumbing, you'll put out the HVAC, and then you'll put out probably general construction will cover
Cover the rest of it.
cover the rest of it.
And that's advertised in the paper?
Yeah.
I like that.
Yes, we always have to advertise in the newspaper and
We have,
put it on the county website. Depending on dollar amounts, sometimes you have to try to solicit the minority of
Yeah.
women business-owned
Yeah.
enterprises.
we have to give everybody an opportunity that would be interested in this project to bid on
I
it.
like that. I'm good with that.
Do we got time to work on this?
Well,
To get her going?
We'll do it, I guess.
And Derek, the funds are here, correct? We have the state funding for this 300,000.
Yep.
Yes.
As long as it doesn't go over 300,000, we'll need an architect, right?
Correct.
Right.
Either way, you're taking a chance if they've waited long enough. So I mean, either way, you're taking a chance at this point. I know that's seeming forward for them.
All right, what's your pleasure of the board, gentlemen?
One more question, Jack.
Yes, sir.
These people that you have spoken to are local contractors, correct?
Yes, just for instance, the exterior doors and glass is Franklin Glass, the electric is Midnight Electric out of Andrews. The plumbing is Jimbo down the street here, the HVAC is Corbin and McMahon, the installation and drywall is Select Interiors. Science Road is Brown Cellars, the flagpole is a vendor for the county. The security system is NCI, the floor coverings, passengers, the cabinetry is from Lowe's, the appliances are from Lowe's, the gutters from K&L Metal, the tire stops are from Bates Concrete, and it goes on and on and on like that.
This took a lot of
That's
time to
great.
get to.
Yeah, it took a little bit, took a little bit.
Thank you.
Hope you're getting paid.
We like dirt.
Yeah, I'll
Yes,
sign it.
Bill? All right, what's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion to move on with.
I second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this project? I know it's a little stressful on everybody, but let's give these folks in Navajo something, a Christmas present. And they've been very patient, and they're good people, and it's gonna be a big improvement.
Yeah.
Jackson, thank you a whole bunch. Lori, Derek. No further discussion. Everybody approves, raise your right hand. Thank you, Jack.
We'll get on.
Thank you, Jack.
Jack.
All right, folks. Thank you for coming over. Let's see what's next here. All right. New business. 12A, Mountain Mediation Services, Dissolution In-Kind Space Request, Gabrielle Grant, Executive Director. Hi, Gabrielle, welcome.
Hello. Hello, gentlemen. I sent an email to Mr. Rowland about a month ago. Mountain Mediation Services is dissolving in the end of December. We are here to request some in-kind space. We have 2 offices in the bottom of this building. We have merged our youth services with Heights, and I have the executive director, Marcus Metcalf from Heights. We provide a lot of wraparound continuum of care services for youth, particularly working in partnership with the Department of Juvenile Justice, and do a lot of different things. Marcus, I don't know if you want to come up here and talk about Heights or not, but Heights provides a lot of different services like in-home counseling for juvenile justice youth. We provide a lot of different things, but we are requesting that that office space go to Heights as we dissolve at the end of this month. Because of the strategic partnership, DJJ is literally right. We can throw a piece of paper and hit a court counselor from our offices downstairs. So it's a really good strategic move. It's a better way for us to help keep youth out of the juvenile justice system. We work here in Macon County with Union Academy and the court system at whole. So that's our request.
Thank you, and I've only been on this board 10 years, and there's a lot of things I don't know, but I did not know about the details about MMED, what it making.
Mountain Mediation,
Mountain
yes.
Media Services or Heights.
Yes.
So, and apparently the state stopped the funding on that?
They stopped in 2008, and it has been quite hard for folks, mediation centers, to recover since then. We've done a really good job up until court closures during the pandemic, and that kind of was the straw that broke the camel's back with our adult services. Unfortunately, this is a trend that's seen all over the state. There's about 10 mediation centers in the mediation network throughout the state, and 3 were the fourth. 4 of them have closed in the last year, which is a sad thing because it takes a lot of the cases off the docket in the court system throughout and costs counties a lot less money.
And what funding do you use to?
For our youth services, we are funded through the juvenile crime prevention committees in each county, and Heights took over our youth service contracts in July. And so we serve all 7 counties of the judicial district.
And you're simply asking to continue
For the in-kind office
donation
space.
of your office
Yes, sir.
space, which is minimal,
Yes.
and the effectiveness evaluation of your program?
So last year, I think we served 20 youth in Macon County, but we've been working in this county for quite some time, and none of those youth went into the justice system. So the way in which we work is we try to provide service to prevent kids going into the court system. And Heights does a lot more. They provide mental health counseling, substance use. And so it was a really good merger for us to provide more quality and a continuum of care for the youth in our community, especially our at-risk youth and our youth that are coming from families that are generationally involved in the court systems.
Lord knows we need mediation.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Thank you for taking my questions. Anybody else got anything?
Thank you for what you do.
Eric,
y'all.
do you have a comment?
I don't. Thank you
Okay.
for coming,
Sure.
Gabrielle.
Thank you for
Alright.
what you do.
And do we need action on?
Yeah, if we could get action, because they did the organization name change, just for the record.
Yes.
We'll, to continue the in-kind space donation to Heights.
Yes.
That was previously Mountain Mediation Services.
Yes. And I think the MOU is so old, I couldn't even find a copy from very, very old.
So are
long time
we gonna
ago.
need to put a new MOU
I think you're
together?
gonna need to have a
Yeah,
new MOU.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
So we'll get with the attorney and get a memorandum of understanding drafted between the county and Heights, and we'll have that back at our meeting in January.
Okay.
So no action tonight, Mr.
No
Chairman.
action in that.
Okay.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Thank you,
Thank
Gabrielle.
you.
Mr. Chairman, if we could, we missed a few things. We had the update on Highlands Middle School renovations.
Oh, we did, didn't we?
Moved to B, and then we also have C and D, which were the leases that Warren's here to discuss. So
Which one do you want to do first?
we'll do, just stay in the previous order. We'll do update on Highlands Middle School. Renovations, what we have tonight, what we will be considering. We issued an RFQ for architectural services for the Highlands Middle School renovations. That was issued on November the 2nd, following approval to do so at the October 18th joint meeting of the Board of Commissioners and Board of Education. So we issued that on the 2nd. of November. On November 28th, we received one RFQ back from LS3P. So tonight, the request would be to approve LS3P as the architect for this project and authorize myself as the county manager to enter in to negotiate the architect fee and the contract. The way the funding is set up right now, the estimated cost for planning and design services is $63,430. The estimated construction cost is $634,300. And again, this comes from the Department of Public Instruction Repair and Renovation Fund. That's where this funding would come from for this, and Dr. Baldwin's here, can certainly speak to that as well.
Well, Dr. Baldwin, this is, if I'm not mistaken, this was included on your capital improvement plan, this for renovations. Correct me if I'm wrong, HVAC, maybe doors, windows, roofing, you know, and this, I believe, has been on their existing capital improvement plan for a period of time. And the funding, maybe is it some pass-through money, or is that coming out of our
It's lottery money.
lottery money? So
Yeah, newly established repair and renovations fund.
that's really all I know about it,
Yeah.
and I'm fine to, I mean, I support this, I support it at the joint meeting, I'm fine to table this a week to the next meeting and have an open discussion. I'm good for whatever, but I do think this is needed.
County comments, Chris, you want to comment on it?
It is something that's needed. That building was constructed in '95. So we know that the HVAC, the windows, the flooring, the roof is nearing its lifespan. It's going to need to be replaced. We have an opportunity to replace it with lottery funding, so it's a perfect opportunity.
Now, that money, the Board of Education picks where that money goes, or is it targeted? I mean, it's
repair and renovation fund, and there's certain criteria that must be met before those funds can be allocated.
But you pick which project you want it to go on, though.
We did based on our capital outlay request and the projects that fit within the criteria of that repair and renovation fund.
It has to be classroom
Yes, sir. Has to be
related.
The enlargement, expansion of classroom facilities, improvements of classroom facilities, repair of existing building components and systems of classroom facilities, renovation of existing classroom facilities, equipment purchases for classroom facilities, project planning, design fees. And there's a lot of things that it cannot be used for. So we had to go through their capital outlay list and identify projects that would fit these criteria. Highlands Middle School renovation was the perfect fit.
That's the top?
Yes.
The perfect fit. Any other questions, gentlemen?
Yes, on that, the proposed, and I know this is changing the subject a little bit, but on the pre-K and the additions on the middle school, how's that going to affect, is it, you said the roof needed to be replaced and everything else, is that going to affect the addition, the proposed addition on the middle school?
It should not impact that project. When the pre-K discussion, as well as the renovation of the high school classroom, the makerspace, and those areas identified by AHEC, we had already identified the Highlands Middle School as in need of renovation. We first put the renovation of middle school in with that project, but then with the cost associated with architect fees and that sort of thing, we pulled it out because our folks, our maintenance guys, can bid those projects out. So we pulled it out of the project to reduce the overall cost. Then when the repair and renovation funds became available, we had, because the lottery funds and the state funds, we were required to go back to an architect. So the actual cost went up a little bit. But the overall project with the pre-K facility, the high school renovation, and now the middle school renovation, they should be able to be done in concert with no interference.
Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, you've heard any other comments, discussion? What's the pleasure of the board?
So are you looking for action to hire into a contract
Well,
negotiation?
what we would be doing now is just, we are going to be negotiating a contract. So what we'd be authorizing tonight is for me to negotiate a contract with LS3P that would have to come back before this board to be approved.
You need a motion or general consensus, sir?
I make a motion.
Yeah,
We
motion's
have our
fine.
county manager enter into contract negotiations.
I second that motion.
All right, we got a motion second. No further discussion. All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Chris. Hopefully see you next week. Right, and we got the two,
Yes, 11C will be the lease with Sutton Broadcasting.
we bring this money tonight, right?
Actually, yes.
We like it.
So I will be very brief, but I'll give a very quick historical background just to make sure that particularly our new board members are fully aware of the background about what we're talking about tonight. So Macon County leases a communication site from U.S. Forest Service on County Bald. We have a small building there that we keep some of our emergency communication equipment in. We are allowed to sublease space inside that building to other entities, including commercial tenants. And in 2015, I believe it was, we entered into a sublease agreement with Sutton Broadcasting, which at the time was WNCC, WFSC radio station, to allow them to put some translator equipment in our facility up there, because we're the only game in town on that end of the building. We have the tower, we have the building, et cetera, and the Forest Service doesn't do multiple leases. Long story short, that lasted up until last year. This time last year, we entered into two separate sublease agreements because the equipment and basically the frequencies remain the same, but Blue Ridge Broadcasting purchased, or the assets were basically divided. There's two separate entities involved with the same equipment there now. So we had to enter into two separate sublease agreements. At the time, the board said we're going to do a one-year term. Let's come back in a year, let's look at it, let's look at the numbers, let's make sure it's good for everybody, make sure it's working, and then we'll see about extending the terms. Just as a very quick thing for the board, you heard me tell you at the beginning, we did not have to have a public hearing on this. If we allow or we enter into a lease agreement with an entity up to a year, the requirements are basically very minimal. If you go from 1 year up to 10 years, we're required to do that by resolution. We're also required to post that notice in the media, which we have done. And if you go anything over 10 years, you're required to go through a bid process, and you'll have to have a public hearing, and it's a lot bigger process. So that's typically why we don't enter in an agreement. We'll stick to the 10-year or less, and it's good business for us to look at it at least every 10 years. So, long story short, the previous sublease agreements with Sutton Broadcasting was $500 a month. Blue Ridge Broadcasting was $250 a month. Now, were some questions the board wanted to know about expenses on our part on what it cost us to run that location. One of the big expenses that we enter into is the lease fee with the Forest Service. As long as we have public safety equipment there, we're not charged a lease fee. All of our stuff is exempt. When we go into the business of having a commercial tenant inside that facility, we fall into a different lease structure. We're charging an annual fee. Last year, that fee, and I'm not even going to attempt to tell you how the federal government comes up with that number, but last year, that number was $1,600.64 annually. This year, whenever we had the November meeting, we always get our bill the middle of November, so we had not got the newest figures for this year. Well, that bill came about the middle of November. Now, because we have two high-value commercial tenants there, that number changed a little. They charged the $1,600, and it was adjusted a little bit for inflation with the consumer price index this year. It was $1,679 and some change for the first entity, which would be Sutton Broadcasting. And then they take the second highest one, which would have been Blue Ridge Broadcasting, and charge us a quarter of that amount. So, long story short, that dollar amount changed to $2,086.78. One of the things that these tenants agreed to do at the last meeting, they agreed to, in addition to paying the lease fees or the sublease fees that they normally pay us, they agreed to absorb that cost of that U.S. Forest Service lease fee as well on a 2/3 and 1/3 basis between the two companies. We also talked about the value of that asset up there and how costs change over a period of 10 years and what that's actually worth. So we look back at the numbers that we have in there. I'm going to talk to you about some other expenses. We also looked at how the U.S. Forest Service fees have changed over the years. The 5-year period that we looked at with U.S. Forest Service fees, they changed about 2.8% average. Some years they were a little more, some years they were a little less, but we average about 2.8%. And then, of course, we have our expenses that are in there as well that'll go up and down. So what we did was we took the base rate that they were paying last year. We added in the 2/3 of the U.S. Forest Service lease fee for Sutton Broadcasting, divided it up by 12 months. We took the 1/3 for Blue Ridge Broadcasting, divided it by 12 months, and put it on their lease and came up with some new starting numbers. We added a 3% economic growth or economic, what's the term I'm looking for, Lord? Annual escalator. That's the term. That's what I was looking for. To keep us covered those fees and other expenses through the next 10 years. Now, the numbers that we discussed, what does it cost us? There's some utility fees. Our electric bill there is running about $319 a month, or about $3,800 a year. There's a lot of equipment up there. We do run a couple of small electric heaters up there just to keep stuff a little bit above freezing. Believe it or not, electronic stuff doesn't like below freezing temperatures, so we do that. That's probably our biggest utility expense. We have a 500-gallon LP gas tank there that only runs a generator. We put $800 and some worth of LP gas in it this year, but that's the first time in about 4 years I think we put gas in it. So we figure that's about $200 a year, and we actually have a generator company that goes and services the generator and tests all the actual generation parts of it for $525 for 2 visits a year. We have some indirect personnel costs. We send an employee to that site as well as all of our sites once a month they actually switch the load over to the generator. We run the whole place on the generator for an hour. And we do that, number one, because that's good for our generator, because they like to run. They don't like to just sit there and idle and test occasionally. But we do it for Office of State Fire Marshal points on their fire inspection ratings. We get a few points for load testing that. But it's 45 minutes up there, it's an hour up there, 45 minutes back. So there's some expenses with that. There's some expenses with some PM visits. We double up, we mow the grass while we're doing the generator inspections. But long story short, and our estimate on our normal expenses, it costs us about $7,800 and some change a year to operate that site. Now, we'll have some other things happen. Line Springs this year, I think we replaced 6 batteries, which are the big gel cells. They're about $300 to $400 a piece, but that's not an every year thing. So there's a few expenses in there. But basically, after Lori and I have looked at the numbers, we're comfortable with the base rate plus the addition of the U.S. Forest Service fee tacked on, plus a 3% annual escalation, whatever that term that I can't seem to remember, that will keep us comfortable with our finances there, so it won't be a financial burden on us for the next 10 years. The other thing the board did ask was, the question came up in the last meeting, what if the tower falls? Where is the obligation for us to put that back up to keep them in business? There is a clause in our contract that says if there's a failure there and it's not something that's very minor, that I think the term's 60 days, that we can't put it back in 60 days and you're not going to put a tower back in 60 days, then we're not required to do that and the lease is no longer valid. And basically tonight, if depending on how you feel about the numbers, where you want to go with those, We would need a motion to approve the subleases and the resolution to enter into those subleases so that we're perfectly okay with that. And I also have Mr. Art Sutton here that can speak on behalf of both those agencies if anybody has any questions.
What is it, 6 and 3?
Can you give me a recap on the finance end of this? It's costing us $7,800 a year. What does it generate on an annual basis?
The first year, if you add both of those together, Sutton Broadcasting is $615 a month, Blue Ridge is $307. If you add those together, that's $11,064.
And I'm good with that. Have you seen the contract?
Yes.
We're in good shape?
Yes, Warren and I worked on that, and then worked on it for last time, then we had when we went to 10 years, we redid it, added the clause about the duty to repair and the lack thereof if it's substantial, so that's all.
Could I have one comment, Mr.? When we started this in 2015, we had the 104.1 and the 104.9, and we had received from the FCC the 101.3. We were paying the $500 a month for those three. When we transferred the 101.3 to Billy Graham's FM station, we asked them to pay the county $250. So the three antennas are now generating 50% more starting as of last year. And I talked with them for the renewal of this lease, and they agreed to the 3% annual increase and covering the forestry services new charge, which we did not have when this began 5 years ago. That's a new thing that the government dropped in on us, I think, about a year ago. So I just wanted to make, and also understand that while we have our equipment there, the county has its own 911 and communications equipment, so
Yeah.
you're getting that benefit by our being there to produce some revenue for the county. So I just want to make sure that's noted. And I thank the county for your long relationship with us. We hope to continue.
Thank you. You're buying the gas so we can keep our stuff going.
Yes, there will be some expense there if they leave anyway.
It's been a wonderful relationship that allowed us to, as you may recall, our signal was very limited in Franklin, and by being able to be up there, we were able to expand this coverage greatly. So thank you.
That's what we like to hear. What's the pleasure of the board?
Sounds really good. There's no cost to the taxpayers.
Right.
That's correct.
Are we looking for contract negotiations, or are we looking, or can we go ahead and lease?
No, we're entering in.
Yeah, their current lease expires the last day of December, and we actually have a start date 1st of January.
What's
on
the
that.
term of the new lease? Has that been?
10 years is what I have in here. Now you,
If you want my opinion, I'd rather not go 10 years.
that's,
I'd rather stick around the 5 mark and not tie up future boards, my opinion, but.
You make an informed motion, we'll throw it against the wall and see what
Eric,
sticks.
is there a benefit to
Can
going
I
10
ask,
years versus 5 years?
Can I give you input that 5 years is a very tight window for us to go through the processing of changing locations, even if it's by a couple of 100 feet? We certainly don't have a problem if there's an initial 5-year term that we can renew, but it's difficult for us now to go through all the red tape, that if the county were to decide not to renew this, 5 years is making it very difficult for us to do that. And it's a standard, we have 30-year leases in other stations that we operate, so we wanted to, one incentive we offered for the longer term was to give the annual increase so that the county's not stuck with a fixed rate. So I would appreciate that accommodation if possible.
Eric, what do you think about, what pros and cons, 5 versus 10 years? I don't see any.
I'm gonna defer to Warren on that. We were just year to year, correct, until this.
we were longer with Sutton, and the only reason we went to 1 year is when we did the sublease, when we split it up. That's why we only did the 1 year to see.
Forestry services, long-term.
It's a 20-year
It's
lease.
a 20-year lease with the Forest Service.
We're at a 20-year lease.
And there isn't any this isn't an exclusive lease, so we still have if other people wanted to come in, we could still lease to other people, am I right, Warren?
That's correct.
So we're not being, in other words, this isn't taking up so much tower space that we've got so many people waiting in line that we can negotiate a higher rate in 5 years. We can still lease to other people, at any time as well. I don't know, it kind of depends on how long this technology lasts, that this is still how communications are transmitted is by radio, it's been that way for close to 100 years now, but that doesn't mean it'll continue another 20. I don't know. So I guess what I'm saying is I defer to Warren on his recommendation.
You feel good about 10 years? Would you rather stick around 5?
I'm actually okay with 10. I understand where you're coming from. I understand his concern as far as getting FCC approval. If he were to have to move, the time frame it would take him to get approval from the FCC, well, number one, to find a site to go somewhere else, then to get the approval through the FCC to move his stuff. I also understand that.
We factored in some easy outs with the county, and we're not. I'm okay with that.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion, we enter into a contract with Sutton Broadcasting.
We'll actually have two. We'll have the approval of the resolution, and to enter into the sublease with Sutton Broadcasting would be the first one.
I guess, I'll make the first motion. As Warren stated, enter into the contract, as stated.
For 10 years.
For 10 years.
Second.
Have a motion second, further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Thank you, gentlemen.
And the second one would be to enter into the agreement with Blue Ridge Broadcasting and approve the resolution of the sublease for the 10-year period.
I also make a motion.
I sound like an attorney, don't I?
The motion that's presented by Warren.
I did that to make Eric happy.
Keep your name out there.
What's the name, seriously, what's the name?
Blue Ridge Broadcasting.
Blue Ridge Broadcasting, a 10-year contract similar to Sutton
Yes,
Broadcasting.
that's correct.
Second.
Motion and a second, further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand.
Thank you.
Reflect unanimous. Thank you, Warren. Now it's got caught up there.
We're caught up. We're to 12B.
Southwestern Day.
Hey,
Thanks
good
for-
evening.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Of course, my
This is,
Yes, this is
how do you pronounce it?
Hezave.
Hesade. With DOT?
Yes, I am the DOT. I drove from Raleigh to here for this meeting.
You drove from Raleigh?
Yeah. That's for the meeting. And it's my first time in Macon County. It's really beautiful.
We're glad you're up here.
You can talk to him about 441 about it.
As I said, my name is Amin. I am from Transportation Planning Division. I work for Department of Transportation as a transportation engineer. Today I'm here with Ms. Rose Boggins from Southwestern RPO. I'm sure probably you know her. And the reason that I'm here because we are requesting for your approval for the projection of socioeconomic data in year 2015. So for your grandchildren probably. So why we need this approval? The reason for that is that we are doing a travel demand model. Travel demand model is a very powerful tool that we have in DOT that we are simulating the traffic flow and traffic pattern in the base year. Here it's 2021, and based on the travel pattern and existing condition, we are trying to project the travel pattern in the future and try to see what system needs, what are the deficiencies, what problem it has, what are the congestion issues, what are the safety issues. And based on the simulation that we have, we are trying to address those before we get to the point of no return. In order to build this model, and we are doing this model for the Southwestern RPO and another RPO in the coastal area, These models are usually used for highly dense urban area like Raleigh, RDU, like Charlotte area. But we were very fortunate, in TPD, because we started a pilot study in Southwestern RPO, and, I'm the person who's in charge of Southwestern RPO. So this is very exciting, actually, for me. And we are doing this in Southwestern RPO for Swain County, Jackson County, Macon, Clay, Cherokee, and Graham County. And the input that we use for this model are two things. One of them is the transportation system that, we are working with RPO. We selected our study roads, et cetera, and et cetera. And the next part is the socioeconomic data. We are using population, employment, and we use those numbers from, we get those numbers from OSPM and available database, Office of State Budget and Management, and, available vendors that sell the employment information at county level or city level and tell us, basically how many people are working in a certain location. So we use those numbers. And, Rose, do you want to add a story? Yep.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, sure.
I'm Rose Bogus, and like Amin said, I work with the Southwestern Commission. I'm the transportation planner for the 6 western counties, and I serve as a liaison between NCDOT and the local government, so I'm your representative on that. And essentially what we're doing with this pilot travel demand model is to kind of test it out in the rural areas. This is the first one that's been done in the state, the Southwest and the kind of Northeast rural areas, to see if this tool works as well in the rural areas as it does in the urban areas. So what we have done, we've also worked with Joe Allen in the planning department to kind of add to the census data on population and housing, try to look at our seasonal influx, look at certificates of occupancy and parcel data and lots of different sources, sales tax, to try to kind of come up with the best number. And so what we need from y'all is to say, we've looked at all these different data sources. We know you're not demographers, but you have the local knowledge that you could tell us if this estimate seems reasonable. So with the past 30 years on average, it fluctuates, but there's over average 30 years, 1% growth per year in Macon County. And so we are proposing to use that same growth rate for the next 20 years. This model goes out to 2050?
2050.
2050.
Next
So-
30 years.
So we're modeling forward based on the past, and so we just want to check in with you to make sure that there's nothing that you know of on the local level that might drastically change that. If you knew of something that was going to completely stop growth or exponentially increase growth, that we would need to consider in addition to all the data that we've already studied and worked on with Joe and the demographer. So this is kind of just a gut check. Does that 1% per year, do you think that is a reasonable assumption to continue for the next 20 years?
Go ahead.
Well, the only couple things I would throw out there are COVID and remote learning and remote, I guess, working.
Absolutely,
You know,
yes.
so if we're trending 1%, I feel like there was a dramatic spike. And, how that trends from here on out, to me is
So the 1% number that we have, and it's actually 0.9%. That's the number that OSPM, recommended, and they are looking at the past 50 years. So 2019 and 2020 and 21 could be an outlier compared to the 50 years. But, when we look at the past 50 years, it's 0.9%. But we understand that there are a lot of people coming to the mountain area. They are coming from Florida, they are coming from Georgia and other states. And for tax purposes or any other reason that they have, they may not declare residency. And they are here for like 6-8 months of the year. Something that travel demand model has is a component that actually consider, the tourism in the area. And although it's a very difficult situation, but we are trying to consider those part-time residents into the tourism, component that we have into the model. This is something that we are aware of that, and we know that the mountain area in general has a higher percentage of the part-time resident compared to the rest of the state. And we are trying to address that And this is one of the reasons that we are starting with this area as a pilot.
Yeah, and we're still, kind of trying to figure out what the impacts of COVID and remote learning and expanding broadband into the county will change travel patterns. Because what we're ultimately trying to predict is vehicles and number of trips between work and home and school and various places. So we are in the middle of a bit of a, it's a dynamic time right now, so we aren't going to be perfect at predicting the future. Travel patterns are changing. We're a lot of technology coming on with different kinds of vehicles. So we don't know. We are just trying to taking the best data sources that we know of and putting them all together and trying to make the best estimate.
Yeah, the alternative to the solution, the travel demand model, is that, a couple of people sitting, around a desk and say, we think this location will have like 10,000 vehicles a day in 2050, which is, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's not a good thing. It's opinion.
Anybody get anything?
Thanks for making the trip up here.
Of course, my pleasure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, where are you from? I'm sorry. Are you from around here?
I'm from Hayesville, but I live in Sylvan now. Our office is in Sylvan. So I've been around here my whole life.
Thanks for making the trip.
Absolutely, all the way over Kelly. So if we could get a motion from the board to approve the 1% per year growth rate for the travel demand model.
That's a very subjective motion, but
Mm.
I don't see, and you need that to complete, you need action.
Yeah,
We don't want 1% or not. You don't either.
Right.
You need some action on it.
I guess if you knew of anything that, because that's what the historical data and all the other data that we've looked at shows and the state demographers' projections, if you knew of something on a local level that would drastically change that, if there were, if you were aware it wasn't something that wasn't public, but if Google were coming to set up shop in, Nantahala, then that would be important information.
That's a good way to start.
Well, I want to add this as well. One of the benefits of this travel demand model is that, let's say the population of the here is going to explode and, be twofold by 2030. It's not going to happen, but let's say. You can enter that into the model, and the model tells you what would be the traffic situation if the population increases by like twofold. So this is
Population, regarding to age.
yes, regarding to age, we use that number actually to predict, to say, for example, how many trips people of a certain neighborhood make. For example, let's say there's a neighborhood that most of the people are elderly, and there's another one that everyone is young. So we use that age cohort to calculate the number of trips that people make. But this is something that comes with the census data, and we have that number.
And I think Macon County is one of the fastest growing senior populations.
Yeah, well, we noticed that when we looked at the census data, I think the median age for this area was about like 57, something like that. I'm just speaking off the top of my head, but it was something like 50 plus. It was higher than the rest of the state.
So you need a motion that we're saying that we're accepting. I'm sorry, I'm feeling, I don't really
No,
understand.
I understand, because it is projecting into the future, and it's based on a lot of assumptions that we don't know 100% sure, but we don't want to go building a model based on historical data without checking in with the locals and saying, does this seem reasonable to y'all? Do you know of anything different? It's a balance between factors that we know of. People want to move here because it's beautiful and the quality of life is great. There's also a limited availability of land. You can't take everybody. So it's a balance, looking at the historical data and the available data. And so we're not saying that you're guaranteeing it's going to continue to grow at that rate, but that, do you know of any reason why we shouldn't use that assumption going forward of the 1%?
Well, I will make a motion that I accept the fact that Amin drove up here from Raleigh and has presented us with some documentation supporting a 1% projected growth rate for Macon County. I can't confirm if that's accurate or inaccurate, but I will accept that it is 1%, if that will help you in your modeling program.
It does.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your hand. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And my business card is there. If you need any question about transportation, please
Right
do not
there.
hesitate to reach me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is
Safe
slightly
journey
related.
back.
I understand you're not making the liaison appointments tonight, but I did just want to, if I may, make a quick plug for the seat on the Southwestern Commission Board and also the Transportation Advisory Board. Those seats are vacant for Macon County, and our next meeting is January 23rd, and we look forward to working with whoever the board chooses to appoint to those seats.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We have the Region A Rural Transportation Advisory,
That's correct, yes. That's me.
and that is a required liaison appointment.
Yes, sir. If you want any transportation projects funded, it is.
We need 441 paved. We got some new roundabouts that are pretty smooth. When you get off of them, it's dangerous. What was the other one? The
The
Southwestern Commission?
Southwestern Commission Board. That's the Regional Council of Government for
Yes,
for
I'm
Western.
familiar with Southwest. I didn't
How
see it
often do
on.
you guys meet?
Every 2 months, on the fourth Monday of the month, except for in July, we don't have a business meeting, we have a social
see
dinner.
Southwestern
So
Commission.
six meetings a year.
You said it's a Southwestern Commission Board?
That's correct.
Is it on here, Derek?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking quickly.
And then the Transportation Advisory Committee is its own separate board. It's often the
That's,
same person. but-
the Southwestern Board would not be a liaison appointment, it would be
A board member.
a board member.
Okay.
Yeah.
A board member from this board serving on the South, I think, was
Ronnie.
Ronnie was that for years. Okay, he's a board member.
And he was also the Transportation Advisory Committee
Yes.
member.
Yes, so we can talk Mr. Shields into it. We'll see you in January.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Safe travels.
Thank you.
What y'all waiting on? Consideration of Macon County Public Health Billing Guide and Fee Schedule.
Good evening.
Melissa Setzer and Kathy McGaha is the health director. And welcome, ladies, and thanks for hanging around.
Welcome the new board members.
And as she
Congratulations.
said, we could do this through the consent agenda,
Yeah,
but you want to
typically,
present it just to make some new faces.
our billing guide doesn't change too much. But it's been a few years since we've had a chance to focus on it, and we have a finance committee at the health department, and we met, and we had some recommendations that we took to the Board of Health, and now we want to present those to you. By general statute, we're required to get our billing guide approved by the Board of Health and then by the county commissioners, and also our fee plan. So the fees that we charge our patients are approved by both the Board of Health and the County Commission Board. So we've sent over this document, our billing guide, in your packet. And there's just a few things that I want to bring to your attention. On page 4, item number 6, under fee setting. Actually, it's on page 5. We have worked, numerous health departments have always struggled with the fact that when we have an increase in a cost for, say, a lab test or something, and we have to, and we want to change that in the fee plan, we have to go through the steps of coming to the Board of Health and then to the commissioners to have that increase. Basically, we're increasing it because of the cost that we're being charged has increased, okay? So we've worked with our regional administrative consultant to look at wording that we can put in our billing guide so that we can change our fees without having to bring every single fee to you every time. And so this is the wording that they're comfortable with, allowing us to, as long as you look at this billing guide, and I'll show you in a minute our methodology of how we determine our costs. If you approve that, then we will apply that same methodology to all the fees that we have throughout the year. And we will only increase increase our fee based on if, say, our cost goes up. So we've pulled out in an appendix number 3, our methodology, and have made it as clear as we possibly can about how we come up with our fees. They're different. Our clinic fees are somewhat a little bit different than how we come up with our fees for lab. Our dental fees, which I'll talk to you a little bit more about in a minute, our children's dental program is a little bit different than our clinic fees. And of course, environmental health fees and animal service fees are really determined by you. You've determined those through previous meetings in the past. So the methodology appendix is really what we want to bring to your attention and show you. This is how we come up with our fees. If we stick to this, if you approve this billing guide tonight, we will be bound to stick by this methodology with that, so that we don't have to come back for every little $5 increase to you to get that approval. Okay?
Because it normally takes me 2 to 3 months to actually get a fee increase. So we're losing that much money during that period of time.
Okay, so that's one change.
So
Another,
help me out.
Sure.
I've been trying to follow you here. I've not found yet your methodology, how you teach that.
so
Like, is there,
there's an
It's got it
appendix
there.
number 3 that should look like this.
right here, right?
No, it was an attachment to the billing guide. And you can have this copy.
It's the very last page of the billing guide, it looks like.
Oh, okay.
And that billing guide is probably like 50 pages.
I have seen this. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, it's quite in depth.
This is what I was looking for.
Yeah, so this is, we've tried to pull out and spell out exactly how we come up with our fees, so that you guys know this is what we're bound to and when we're determining our fees. And again, like I said, I've worked with our DHHS regional admin consultant to get this wording so that that meets the legal guidelines too that we're bound by. Okay, so the other thing that I want to bring to your attention, on page 18, specifically regarding our dental fees. So our finance committee met, we went over all our fees and looked at, when we started the children's dental program, the goal was to make that pretty much a self-sustaining program as possible. It's not a mandated service, but it's a service that does a lot of good for a lot of our kids. So we were looking at the revenue that we were generating and the fee, the cost of the service, and previously we had, for those that qualified, could get the most discount was up to 25% of the cost. And we were looking at the fact that we were kind of losing money, and we don't want to do that. So our recommendation is that we discount to 50% instead of 25%. And that would basically cover our cost for the service. So our financial committee looked at all the different fees that we generate through the child service, and with that consideration, that is the recommendation coming forward. So we would have to have a vote on that too. Okay, the third thing that I want to draw your attention to is on page 23. I'm sure you have seen in the newspapers information about our new school-based health center telehealth program. And so we had to add that service into our billing guide and how we were going to charge for that service. So that information is on page 23. Basically, for children, we'd have to follow our child health, same guidelines as our child health program. for teachers and adults, we added a $30 fee, baseline fee for the teachers and adults to use the telehealth service. So that's an addition. And that's the majority. We did pull those appendix out and highlighted that for your benefit. So those are the main changes to the actual billing guide. And I think that we probably would want to have a separate vote for the billing guide and then the fee plan.
And what?
Then the fee plan, which we're going to talk about in just a second. So if we can get a vote on the billing guide and the changes that are presented.
Okay, two separate.
Mhm.
Billing guide and the fee change or fee structure? What
The
is-
fee plan
Fee plan.
will be next.
Having been the member of the Board of Health occasionally, when I feel like going, and knowing that this has been approved by the Board of Health, what's the pleasure of the board? I'll make a motion that we adopt the billing code. Second? Any discussion?
I'd just like to bring up a few points, and I'm new here, I've been here 2 years, still catching on, but I feel like, is this a series of checks and balances? Like, is there a reason that your board has to vet this and then come before our board to vet this? Like, if we just put a blanket policy, across that you guys can adjust rates as needed, I'm just asking.
So annually, we still have to come to you. That doesn't, what this eliminates is us coming to you every month throughout to say, because
materials go up.
we've had a cost rise of $5. We can't, the way it stands now, we can't increase that fee without coming to you. So,
And the way this is structured, that makes a lot more sense. Okay.
And some of the fees like environmental health, animal control,
they don't change very often.
this board sets those. Some of those through like the animal control board, so I guess it is a check and balance. All those in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Thank you, Kathy. All right, Melissa?
So we had a mishap. Somehow the wrong fee schedule got loaded in to what was sent up. So we wanted to hand out the actual one that was approved by the Board of Health.
You fooled every one of us.
You know, it's one of those things.
There's a lot of numbers there.
It's a lot of numbers.
We offer a lot of services.
We do. And this covers all of our services, not just our clinical services, but our dental services, our lab services, and what animal control and environmental health has. There are a couple, nothing has changed except 3 that, from what you had approved last year. And mine, I have to apologize, mine does not have page numbers. But this year, we had a couple new lab tests that came in that we've not been able to do. We've had to turn people away just because we didn't have a fee. The high pylori, we have added, this is a test that Julie has requested that we add, that we can use for primary care and different clinic patients. It is 110. And if you wanted to look at that, the number on it is 83013. Right below that on the same page, which is 87428, is a new flu and COVID test. This is a combined test. Instead of just doing a COVID test and a flu test separately, this is one combined test, which is $64. Then over right before the dental section, which the code on this one is still pending. This is a new one. This goes along with what Kathy was talking about as the school-based health that we're moving into the school systems. This is the $30 visit that will be for the adults that are actually employed with the county school system that don't have insurance. This will be their set fee of $30 for that service. Those are the only 3 changes that we actually made to the fee plan this year.
Questions, anybody?
Make a motion, we adopt the fee schedule.
I second. More discussion? Everybody in favor, signify by raising your right hand.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna do the community, you're gonna stay and do that now?
So, as you've heard before, we have a nonprofit agency, the Community Care Clinic of Franklin. There's one in Highlands as well. If you're not familiar, there's 2 of them in the county. They actually utilize space of ours at the health department in the evenings. And also, there's a couple of office space that they have in the front of the building so that in the daytime, their patients can have access to their staff. This arrangement has been in place probably close to a decade. And it's a great service. We have volunteer physicians that volunteer their time to see these patients. And they have a small staff of a couple of people that just coordinate the program and administer the program. So I worked with Eric to update the lease to reflect that new space. So the only change that actually happened was we went from, they had cubicles to they now have a couple of office space, which they had a grant that funded the construction of that office space. So that's how that was funded. And we've only asked for a small period of time because we're trying to get all our leases on an annual basis. So we're starting in December, and this one in particular is starting in December, ending in June, and we'll get on the routine of getting these updated every year. So that's what it's there for your consideration. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer it.
Who funds those positions for that community clinic?
It's mostly grant funded. They do get local contributions that fund it. So it's a combination. I would say the one in Highlands is much more locally funded than they are grant funded. The one in Franklin is much more grant funded than they are locally funded. So it's.
There's no fee, you don't have a fee schedule?
No,
It's a free clinic, right?
Yeah, it's a free clinic, so that you can't have any insurance, and you have to be below a certain point in the poverty level to access their services. It's a great service. We work hand in hand with the health department. So, they try not to duplicate anything that we do, and they're available for our patients who need primary care and more care than we can provide.
And we rent them that space for $0, right?
Correct.
And that's
the same thing for the Highlands Free Clinic up at the Highlands, what's the name of that? By the hospital, that facility. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head.
no, my bad.
You talking about Zachary Park?
Yeah, the one with that little building
That's where it
and
is,
underneath
yeah.
yeah.
It's downstairs, isn't it?
Yeah. That's where the Highlands Clinic functions out of. Our clinic functions about three nights a week. I think they may be at 2 nights a week up in Highlands, so.
And where did you say our Franklin Clinic is located?
At our facility, they just use our facility in the evenings. And then they have a couple of office spaces up the front door so that when their clients come in and they can pick up some medicine or whatever, they can access them directly at the front.
It's usually busy.
What's-
Zachary Park.
Mm-hmm.
What's the pleasure of the board?
So she's asking for a lease agreement, to continue a lease agreement?
Yeah, it's just, it doesn't cost us anything.
I make a motion, we approve a lease agreement.
That'll be good until June or
And then
whatever.
we'll get on a routine schedule. I don't think the last one was approved for 5 or 6 years, so.
Got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you, Kathy,
Thank you, gentlemen.
for hanging out and waiting on us.
Thank you very much.
11E, New Hampshire. Consideration of bid for transit department parking facility, and I don't think that was included in the packet, was it, or is that an add-on?
Yeah, I had it, it was included in the packet, but I handed them out to you because it got missed.
Okay, I never could find it. And I'm also supposed to be a liaison with, so I guess if I'd come to meetings, you might give me that stuff. Not a very good liaison member. Yeah. Go ahead, Donna.
I'm just asking for the board to approve the bid to Al Construction for the awning, bus barn, whatever you want to call it, over our vehicle parking lot, in the amount of $254,000 as a sole source purchase, and authorize county manager to enter into a contract with Al Construction.
So,
Have you got any pictures or anything?
Not on me. It's just gonna be like an awning. It's open on all sides.
$250,000.
You got a picture?
I don't have a picture, it's just a red iron metal building, cover the buses and the parking garage down there, it's open on all four sides, there's no electric, plumbing, just the support structure, it's all it is for free.
On slab or gravel?
No, it's on the parking lot.
Paved, okay.
I mean, Jack, does that sound right? I mean, $250,000 for a pole barn, is it?
That was better than our first quote.
And these funds are, correct me if I'm wrong.
Federal.
They're federal funds passed through, we pay 10%,
20,
we pay 20%.
yes. Which this was already approved on June 14th. I came to the board and asked for the match on the
And,
screen.
I feel like this thing's been advertised several times for bids, and we defaulted with this construction company, so, I mean, as long as you're happy with it, we allocated the funds back in the summer. Make a motion, we enter into contract negotiations with Al Construction.
Okay,
Motion to award the bid to Al Construction
yeah,
Okay.
in the amount
I
of
want to award the bid to Al
Yes, thank you.
Construction.
yes.
Rephrase that.
And I'll second that, since he and I were committed to it on June. Any discussion, gentlemen? All in favor, raise your right hand. All right.
Thank you,
Is
gentlemen.
that it? Thank you for hanging in there, Darlene. All right, Mr. Stahl,
Yes, sir.
Just wanted to have it on record.
please present.
Actually, I'm going to be looking for 3 actions from the board tonight, but they should all be fairly simple, hopefully. Feel free to ask any questions. The first one, which I'm just going to look here and see what it says the first one is. The first one is ask the board to adopt a resolution to exempt engineering services from the normal bid procedure per Article 3D, Chapter 143 of the North Carolina General Statutes. And which one is this? BLE is a consultant that is doing our groundwater monitoring. In 2010, we instituted a corrective action measure at the requirement of DEQ. And so every 5 years, we have to have a certified engineer or geologist send them an update on how that's going. And so since BLE is providing our groundwater monitoring and has the data, would request that you adopt a resolution to exempt the bid process so that we can proceed to have BLE perform this service for us.
And are we looking for consulting services, architecture
Consulting
services?
services, engineering and consulting services.
What's the amount?
You know, I did not bring my attachment except on a thumb drive, so I would have to,
10,800.
so it should be in your packet.
10,800, if I'm looking at the correct
I
one,
need to-
BLE.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Is it for corrective action evaluation report?
It is.
Okay, yep, 10.8.
Yeah, is that for the actual monitoring or the consulting?
No, this is a, sorry.
There's 400 pages in there.
This is, what this is 2000, we had detections, and so we had to submit a corrective action plan. The state approved that plan in 2012. We made those changes, and now every 5 years, those changes have to be reviewed to see did our plan work? Is it doing what it was supposed to do? And so that is, the company we used to be with provided these services. Now BLE, it's due again, and we need someone to send this in for us. So that BLE has the data, has given us a price of $10,000, what she said, $800 to perform these services, and so just need y'all to adopt a resolution exempting the bid process for these services.
Who is your review committee?
Say that again?
Review committee?
What do you mean by that?
Who is that?
What do you mean by that?
Well, a couple of times you mentioned, and I used to be, I think, wasn't I the liaison to the landfill for a while?
I think you,
But we never did, well, I showed up once or twice.
we talked a couple times.
Yeah, on the phone.
I don't have a review committee. I don't
Mr.
know.
Saul is requesting that the board approve the recommendations of the review committee.
That's for item 3, and I will explain what that review committee is at item 3, or I can tell you now, but it has nothing to do with this.
So one committee's got appointed another committee?
No.
Anyway, I
Okay.
just wondered what that was.
Okay, so in item 3 that I have is for another project, which we sent out a request for qualifications through our normal bid procedure. This one, we didn't exempt the bid procedure. We went through the bid procedure, and we got a statement of qualifications back from one firm, well, 2 firms, 1 submittal. And so when we do that, when we ask for a statement of qualifications, because as you know, with consulting services like this, you can't do it on price, you do it on qualifications. And so the committee had a fairly easy job because we only had 1 submittal. So all we had to do was determine, is the submittal responsive? Meaning, can they do what we've asked them to do? And the review committee is myself, Lindsay, sometimes Lori, sometimes Derek. I think this time it was probably me and Lindsay.
Just checking the boxes.
We have to, if it was a bid, there's a bid tab. If there had been more than 1 people, there would have still been a tabulation that I would have presented, detailing how they met the requirements. Since we had 1, I reviewed it, I reviewed it in Lindsay's office. We checked all the boxes that, yes, they can do what we are asking them to do. And so we would then ask, on number 3, I will ask the board to accept that and allow us to enter into negotiations to get contracts to perform that work. And I can detail that work when we get to 3, or C, or however.
As liaison to the landfill, environmental health, I'd like to make a motion that we award BLE and exempt the bid procedure because of previous relationships. They have the data, we have a good networking relationship, and the amount of $10,800.
I'll second the motion. Discussion, gentlemen? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Record show is unanimous. All right, resolution to accept engineering services for a turn lane.
Okay, similar situation, different project. As you know, we have been a couple of years trying to get a new convenience center built out in the Cartuga community or Carson community. We remove the one from the Carson community and move it out to the old school site. What has long held that up is discussions with DOT. I'm assuming, some of this is assumption, I'm assuming because convenience centers are have the flow traffic of commercial, but are generally set in residential areas, DOT has has some extra approvals as far as ingress and egress. And so DOT had originally asked for a lot. We talked them into asking for less. They finally have agreed to that. But we do have to get a permit to construct a deceleration lane for eastbound traffic on 64. We have to put in a turn lane. And so I have in your packet was a proposed contract from McGill Associates, and also, and I won't remember the name, the pertinent part of the work would be through some other group. Nobody's going to save me and find it faster. And
Well, I've got the document over here.
well, for some reason I don't. That's kind of odd.
You want it?
Or I clicked the wrong one. But anyway, for McGill to basically get the permit through this other company, get the permit from DOT to approve the construction of a turn lane, and then the bid stuff and the contract, the construction management of getting that in so that we can commence with development of that site.
Is it the traffic planning and design?
That's the one, traffic planning and design.
It looks like their fee, McGill's fee is $43,650.
Yes. It looks like they hit 10 or 15% on top of the place you said, because they'll have to review that stuff and incorporate it into what they're going to do. But yes, since it's under 50,000 and we've gotten this far, I'm asking the board for another resolution to exempt the bid process per the statute that I mentioned earlier, and allow us to enter into a contract with McGill Associates to get this permit and get this turn lane constructed for the new center in Cartuga.
And that fund is in your enterprise fund, right?
Yes.
So this is at the old Cartuga J school?
It is.
That's gonna be really nice.
It is.
Remove the congestion from the
That site's a nightmare.
current site. That is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Well, what will be the name of it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we could call it I offered to call it the Phil Drake Drop-Off Center, since he donated the property, but he declined my offer. Historically, it has been the Carson Center. We may just keep calling it that, even though, I mean, I don't know where that invisible line is, where when you leave Carson and enter Cartuga J. If somebody's more familiar with that, I don't know. But we will probably call it the Carson Center unless we change it to the Cartuga J Center.
I believe about maybe half a mile west of where you are now. It goes into Cartuga.
So we're still in Carson?
No.
Oh, we have left Carson?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a county father by the name of Carson? We could just pretend we were naming it after him, or?
Kit Carson Road through you one time. All right, gentlemen.
I think on your county map, it would show where that line is. And out of respect for Cartuga J community, I think it should be Cartuga J community.
I think that makes sense if, and I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't even know how big Carson community is, but I know Cartuga J community is rather large.
Yeah, but you have a north and a south.
McGill's got it. McGill does all this. They just gotta.
Again, as liaison to the landfill and the working relationship we currently have with McGill, make a motion that we enter in.
We adopt a resolution exempting the process and enter into a contract in the amount she said with them for that.
I'm not gonna begin to repeat that word. If you have something I can read, I'll be happy to make a motion. We, move forward with this. I do like the site. That's it. I'd like to say.
Service with a proposed turn lane. There you go, right there.
Make a motion, we set a resolution to exempt engineering services associated with the proposed turn lane required by the NCDOT for the future Carson Convenience Center from the previous
To be named later.
provisions of the Article 3D, Chapter 143, North Carolina General Statutes.
And
And
enter into a contract.
Contract agreement with McGill.
And since we've been in this longer than the new guys, it may be Greek. I mean, this is all new stuff. I will second the motion. Discussion on the topic.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
McGill and Associates.
Yes, sir.
I've dealt with that company a little bit as well. But the statement that you made with our working and everything with this company, how does another company ever become our friend if we link into McGill every time that something comes up?
Well, I will say, I mean, there's a number of ways I can answer that. I could say I have a lot of friends in the industry. I know a lot of companies. McGill is not our, I guess you could say they're the easiest because we do have a long relationship with them. They're the closest. They're not coming from Raleigh or Charlotte. But on small projects like this, I mean, the project we're going to talk about next, where you'll see their name again, is a much larger project. They were the only one that even responded. So, I've worked with McGill for 21 years. Everything that's ever been submitted to the state, everything that goes on out there has largely passed through their office. And it's not, there's nothing untoward about it. It's just, it kind of doesn't make sense to, well, for landfill stuff, it makes sense to stay with the people who know the landfill as well as I do. For these other things, these small projects, like I said, I don't know that anyone else even would try to, would be interested.
Are there any other companies? I know you said they're not as close as they were, but do you know of other companies?
That provide solid waste services. I know a number of companies, none based in Asheville. CEC is in the other side of Statesville. S&ME is in Charlotte. HDR is in Charlotte. Golder is in Raleigh. Through my time in the association, the North NC SWANA, I served on that board for about 18 years. And so through relationships there and through previous bid processes, I'm familiar with about all of the firms, left out municipal, it's in Raleigh. There's not a lot of, solid waste firms. This is not a solid waste issue. This is a construction project issue. But it's a small project. McGill was previously, a previous board has we already have a relationship with McGill for the design of the center. So they're already involved and know about what's going on out there and what's needed. And so,
Let me say one more thing. I do want to say, I'm glad you asked that question because I had the same reservations. And I guess to justify my motion in the
did you get a second, by the way?
We're in discussion, so I think we did get a session.
I just want to make sure we're not.
Real fast, well, but I feel like, you see what's happening in Nantahala, and you can't find the architects, and for small amounts, $10,000, $40,000, I feel like it's nominal, and you can't find the architects, but I do agree, when we pursue big.
Competition's good.
Yeah, competition is healthy.
And trust me, and what I have found in my years doing this is when we do have competitive processes, it's easy for McGill to be the low bidder for two reasons. One, their proximity, And I think they do work with water, sewer, so they're around. But two, they have the 20 years of knowledge of the landfill. So if I wanted to get CDM to come in and do a landfill project for me, well, they're going to have to recreate, or they're going to have to pay, I'm going to have to pay for copies of all this stuff to retrain them. So it's not, I can understand it looks like the fix is in, but, if you were, you're in private business, not county. If you've got a good supplier, you don't wait till your board of directors meets once a month. You call your supplier and say, this is what I need. We go through the process, but there are legitimate reasons that I've just listed why the process usually turns out this way. We did a project, I did a project last year with another company, Carson Environmental Consultants. They were great, would be happy to use them again. They submitted on the project that I'm going to talk about in a minute that we're going to hopefully postpone. And, a fine company, but they don't really have the experience in solid waste to be, some reasons it's not worth getting into. One of their principals has left, and he was kind of their solid waste president, so use them for services, but not engineering services. So, am I over-explaining? I'm sorry.
No, I don't want to make it more difficult than what it is, but eventually, like you said, on larger projects and stuff like that, we need to build another relationship with someone else to get the competition.
Well, like I said, when we put something out, I think that last project we had three submittals. S&ME, CEC, and McGill. And the award to McGill was not made based on a prior relationship. It was made on the basis that they could best provide these services. Now, why can they best provide these services? Because they've had these plans for 20 years. Is that fair? I don't know if it's fair, but it's reasonable. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
They built the
They built the
landfill. We just happen to be going along for the ride.
And unfortunately, the way the general statutes are, when you're soliciting architect or engineering services, you can't ask how much is your price
No.
to do this. That's not a consideration, unfortunately. So
Right.
all you have is qualifications, and you have to,
It's hard for somebody to be more qualified to work on my landfill than the company that's worked on my landfill for 20 years. And like I said, I get it, but I don't know an easy way around it that wouldn't just wind up being a detriment and cost the county a bunch of money. Frankly, to retrain that 20 years of knowledge to someone else, Anyway.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second on the floor. We've had discussion. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. All right.
Thank you,
You want
gentlemen.
to put this next one off?
No. No, this next one's actually, we could have just done it and I would have been happy. The next one's a little more complicated. Well, okay, what I'm asking you for is not complicated. The point behind it, if you have questions about there's a very large, important thing that's going on here. So what I'm asking for, I guess I need to say it in front, because what I'm asking for is that y'all approve the response that we got. So each year we have to do a capacity analysis. We did one this past May. What that showed is that we had less than 2 years of life left in the landfill. A couple of you guys have heard this before in some version. The COVID, the whole clean out, the massive influx of people in construction is just filling up the landfill much faster than we anticipated, which is especially problematic because we haven't paid off the debt for Phase 3, Cell 1, and we don't even have time to build Phase 3, Cell 2 before that cell is full. And so, what I when I considered all this and thought about, what we're going to do, it occurred to me that there was something we could do, and so I talked to McGill. As you know, last year you awarded almost $1 million contract to McGill and BLE for the closure of cells 1 and 2. And so basically, we put out a scope and asked for qualifications to basically stop that or pause that project, petition the state to allow me to retract that closure certificate and reactivate that landfill, and then re-permit that landfill with 3-to-1 final slopes instead of 2-to-1 final slope. I'm sorry, I said that completely wrong. Instead of 4-to-1 final slopes. And
You're gonna use a 3-to-1.
so the new landfill is permitted at, this is gonna be complicated. The new landfill is permitted at, did that say that was gonna do something, or it didn't like it?
So it may take a while.
All right, well,
It's something I was going to convert it to
yeah,
PDF to Word.
we'll see if it comes up. If it doesn't, I'll email y'all this attachment, because it's not in your. So, basically, in a nutshell, if we reopen cell 2, get it re-permitted at 3-to-1 outer slopes, and also do a similar thing in cell 3, which is a little more complicated. I'll come back to that if you want me to, but the main one is cell 2, phase 2. Somewhere in building cell 3, the new landfill, they changed it from cell 3 phase 1 to phase 3 cell 1, and so the nomenclature, I get it backwards, but the 2 landfills that are full, we want to say they're not full, re-permit them with new outer slopes to match the permit we have on the new landfill. And that will give us, between that and doing a little bit, a similar thing, a vertical expansion in cell 3, we can get an additional 4 years of life. This 4 years of life will actually give us time to build a new cell and finance that cell after we have finished paying for phase 3, cell 1, so that we're not hit with two large debt service payments that would be disastrous to the enterprise fund. I mean, I got to ask you what that lady said earlier, because it freaked me out. So you'll have to tell me what she meant. Okay, thank you. 400 positive, 18,000 negative. I didn't like that. Okay. So
I was going to ask the same question,
what's that?
like the lady said earlier. But I was going to wait for budgeting to do that. But.
Well, and I need to know tomorrow, because I'm
It's the landfill closure, post-closure costs. There's this huge number on the balance sheet.
right.
And that number, bottom line number she was talking about, took that into account. When you're calculating fund balance, you just look at your short-term liabilities, not your long-term, so we're good.
Okay. All right.
Very quick synopsis.
Thank you. So, in essence, that's what, so we sent out an RFQ. Here's the scope. We want these things to happen. Here's the part I left out. I was fishing for it in my head. So anytime you change a landfill's capacity by more than 10%, it is considered a major amendment, or I use the proper words in here, if that's not it, a substantial amendment. There you go. When you do a substantial amendment, it's like you're starting a new landfill. You have to go through all the bells and whistles. Environmental justice, surveying wells and public water supplies. I mean, we're not big enough to need a traffic study, alternate site study, so all these things. And I did all these things back in 2018. As you remember, back then, we had the old original permit, and then we bought some properties to square this thing off and get a lot more life out of the landfill. And I'll swing back to that in a second, but this is another substantial permit amendment. And so we sent out the RFQ to provide these services, and we had one respondent, which was McGill and BLE doing the hydro geo work. And so what I'm asking for is that the commissioners accept the recommendation of the review committee and allow us to enter into a contract with McGill/BLE to provide these services. Fundamentally, what that means is we're going to get, landfill space based on our last construction, which will be the most expensive piece of that sale, because we had to build so much infrastructure to move to the other side of the creek and all that went on in that will still be part of the next sale. But conservatively, you're looking at about, $500,000 an acre to build a landfill. So here we have an opportunity to get 4 years or $2 to $4 million worth of landfill space for about $100,000. And that's just the cheapest space we'll ever get. Now, the $100,000 you don't see, because all we're doing is accepting the respondent of the RFQ. It just so happens that I have seen the contracts, because before I knew how much it was, they went ahead and sent me. I asked them for contracts to provide these services. And I would show you what that means on a map, except I've locked this computer down completely. It won't do anything, so. I'll send those to you. But you can imagine, we have this hill, we want to make this hill. That buys us enough time to fit the financing and to actually have time to construct another cell before we run out of space. Swinging back to what I said earlier, we did this in 2018. As it happens, we never finished that process, because the first cell and the second cell basically live within the footprint that was already permitted back in '97. And so technically, we're not out in that new stuff, so we didn't have to finish that process. But all the work got done. And so DEQ just never read our stuff. So my position is, if they don't think it's going to change in 5 years since they haven't reviewed it, we can use that same submittal for this one. I don't know what they'll say about that, but I sure don't want to redo that, because it was a lot of work. It was kind of painful. But I have spoken with the regional engineer in the Asheville office who would say yay or nay. All indications are he is fine with us withdrawing the closure status, and is fine, given the work that would have to be done under this scope, if that comes out, side slope stability, friction coefficients, stuff I frankly don't understand. But if an engineer says it'll work, it'll work. So all indications are we got to go through the process. The process will take a year or so, depending on how long they hold on to it. But it buys us 4 extra years for, like I said, for $100,000. And they like to do it. It's really going to answer it's going to solve a lot of problems that we are currently facing. I had one more point to make, and it has left my head.
You think about that,
Questions?
let me ask you a question. Does any of this need to be reviewed? Any of these? Where are you at with it? This has to be reviewed.
So what we have now is we have a qualified respondent to our request for qualifications. What I'm asking the board for is to accept the recommendation of the committee and say, yes, we can have these folks do this. Now, what I will have to come back to you with is contracts and award amount and pre-audited that I have the money to do this, budgeting, so all that stuff is yet to happen. But this is kind of the first
Yeah,
step.
you're good to move it along.
All right.
I did, and I remember the last part, which is kind of an important part, so I want to take just a second to say it to you. So we are postponing the closure, right? So if we can get this permit back soon enough, and this is what I'm hoping for. I don't always get what I want, but this is what I'm hoping for. If we start this process, if I can, the first part of this process, I send a letter to Alan Gaither in Asheville and say, please, I want to retract my closure status, and he sends me a letter saying, okay. As soon as that happens and we get to kind of a good stopping point in the new cell, I immediately want to go back to the old cell. Now, if this thing would have come up, you would see, even under the old permit, because of settlement, that we have some space in cell 2, which I could go ahead and start using because I'm not outside, you know. If this is the old one, this is the old one, this is the new one, but this is where we are. I can fill here, eventually fill in here. That makes sense? I really wish I had the visual, but my goal is, so if I can keep at least a year or more of life left in cell 3, and we move everything over to cell 2, once it's full at its new expanded capacity, we have to go back into closure. So what I would love to do is move back to cell 3 and have make the same project excavating for phase 3, cell 2, and capping 1 and 2, and only pay to move 100,000 yards of dirt one time. Will I pull that off? I don't know, because I might be retired by then. But that's, everything about this project is trying to hit it so that I can make both those things happen at once, because you guys in the business know, I mean, if I can pay to move 100,000 yards of dirt, we're saving 500,000, $1 million. I mean, so that's something I'm hoping for as a bonus. As it stands, I need to buy some time, and this buys me time, so.
All right. That was a lot of numbers, cell 2, 3.
I
And the two that-
apologize.
The 2 that are still within the, you know, that you've already worked, can you use that?
Where it's settled, we can use that, but there's not a lot of that that's worth using unless we do this other thing. Meaning, so if again, if I'm going from here to here, well, there's a sliver here that starts at nothing. Until it gets to about 5 feet, you're just putting dirt there. You can't build a lift of trash 6 inches. I mean, it's just stupid. So, yes, I can use that, but there's not a lot, it wouldn't be worth doing unless I could get it all. It might buy me 3 months, which is not a lot of help.
All right, Jim. This would be, we'll entertain a motion to go somewhere.
I appreciate your patience.
Well, thank you for
I do like for you to understand what it is I'm bringing before you. So.
And most times I do. We're still good for 50 years, right?
I'm willing to say we're still good, because we won't be around, so you can't prove me wrong. But no, listen. I spoke to y'all last year about just what has happened to us in the last 3-4 years. I mean, we went from no growth to maybe 0.5% growth, and then 4 years of over 7% growth in waste disposed. I mean, that just doesn't happen. But there will be a reckoning. There will be a time when we go back to, where we're going to drop, not just slow down, but we will be less. You remember the recession in 2009. So by complete coincidence, We shut down the construction demolition landfill in Highlands in '08. For reasons I can tell you at some of the time if you want to know. But we stopped landfill and C&D there and commingled C&D and MSW into the MSW landfill. At that time, the year before that, we had put 31,000 tons of waste in the MSW landfill and 8 to 10,000 tons of C&D in the C&D landfill. The year we combined both, but the recession had taken hold in Macon County because we were a little slower than the average place. But that next year, with both landfills going into one, we didn't go up any. We were still at 30,000 tons. Because when recessions come and we stop building all these houses and putting in all these septic tanks and systems and whatnot, and planting trees and pruning them and buying produce, I don't know, what, sending our kids to karate. But anyway, there will be a correction.
And this is a necessary step that we have to take. I will make a motion that we, was that H or G?
That was, yes,
H?
yes.
Results in recommendation regarding the request for proposal RFP for engineering services for the solid waste department. Is that sufficient for a motion?
Well, you probably need to say that we accept the recommendation of the review committee and allow the county manager to enter into discussion/contract, which will be brought back with McGill/BLE to provide the services laid out in the scope of the RFQ.
What did you just say?
Lord, did you get that down?
Did you?
We got it.
I can,
Get all that.
You got it?
I'll send it to you.
We got it.
We have a motion to that effect from Mr. Antoine, second.
Second.
No more discussion? All in favor, signify by raising your right hand.
Can you move that dirt in-house or do you outsource that?
We will, we're moving it now
That's what I
because we're
figured.
using it for daily cover. And that was the plan all along, was to try to get it, but there are general statutes, and these two folks who probably tell you, we're actually, once a project gets to a certain size, we would have to competitively bid against private contractors to do the service. To do the project. So in that case, we probably wouldn't bid, we would probably just hire somebody to do it. Because we can't decide to do projects ourselves unless we competitively bid them. And since we don't have posted rates for equipment and things like that, it'd be pretty hard for us to put a justifiable bid together. Also, why we can't get reimbursed for county equipment for natural disasters. I learned that back in '03.
Is that it?
Thank you, Chris.
That's all I've got.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I do have one more. I promised somebody here. Our building that burnt, just to give you an update on the status.
Get insurance.
Insurance has cut us a check for the depreciated amount. That is ours to have and hold if we do nothing. We're not going to do nothing. That building is the whole hub of our operation. I'm sure some of y'all have been in there.
Yeah.
And so the next step is I have to write a set of bid specs, which I absolutely hate doing, and get a contractor to come in and do the work. So long as that work stays below 379-ish, we go to work, we do it, we get it fixed, they send us a check for the rest of the money. If it goes over that, we have to have more conversations. Where we stand with that is I have reached out to McGill and to the original structural engineer to try to get those original, those buildings are pre-engineered. So I'm trying to find those 25-year-old pre-engineering documents that say what torque every nut has to be and what gauge everything has to be to simplify the bid process for a contractor coming in. We know the quantities and counts, but Joe, you still awake?
I'm here.
So I've got to get I've got to have an engineer on this project certify the whole building, not just the part that's replaced, because there are citizens going in and out of there. So I'm trying to get those original, company design stuff to put that together. That's where it is, just wanted you to know.
Thank you, sir. Next is declaration of Sheriff's Department.
Yes, we had 3 officers retire. It has customary, the sheriff has sent an email, the previous sheriff, Sheriff Holland, had sent an email before he retired, requesting to award the service weapons of Ken Lane and Danny Burrows, the make and serial numbers of which are in your agenda packet there. And also, there was a request to award the sheriff his service weapons as well, the make and serial numbers which are listed there. At this time, if the board wishes to proceed with this, they declare these weapons surplus, set a price of, we could do $1 or whatever it may be to award these law enforcement officers their service weapons.
I'll make that motion.
Is that 2 and 1, declare them surplus and set the price?
At $1.
Yes. Second that.
Motion second, discussion. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank those officers for their service, too. 12K, 11K, we're going to talk about the liaison assignments. I will put that off, generally that falls to the.
Maybe you're gonna let me go in your spot tonight.
Yeah, I'm gonna take I don't know how to do this, we're gonna do it, we're gonna take 12K off, and then let Gary or Mr. Shields do his thing here.
If you get that piece of paper, if you look at the first paragraph, that pertains to why I believe that the liaison selection process should have a application process built into it. Again, in paragraph 1, during the primary general election process, this past election cycle, I continue to advocate the importance of the liaison program that the county sponsors. I stress the importance due to the opportunity to build relations within our county by being a part of the organizations that continue to support the values of Macon County. In 2021-22, the county had endorsed 35 committee departments that had commissioner liaisons. Macon County has a board of 5, and 60% of our board has 2 years or less experience, and 40% of our board has no experience being a county board liaison member. And that's why I moved it towards an application. In paragraph 2, in our agenda tonight, we have county department boards requesting the commissioner board to accept their recommendations via emails in an application process called Application for Appointment to Macon County Authorities, Boards, Commission, and Committees. Applicants in our agenda packet are from the Boards of Health, 1 seat, Planning Board, 2 seats, and Value Health Regional Board, 1 seat, accompanied with the email indicating the need for board liaison tonight due to their first regional meeting on January 9, 23, and that's Value. Paragraph 3, with an application, we built in a situation here. I would like to encourage that the Macon County Commissioner Board to utilize the application process that would allow the requester to seek a appointee application, allow members to review application, and appointee then can meet requester for business going forward or not. If approved, the liaison application would be returned to the county board for approval going forward. This application that the appointee would take to the requester would create a dialogue within that requester. Because of the inexperience that we have and the number we have, it is hard to go in as a liaison to a group and never walk through the door. you need to go in there with something in your hand so you can have a dialogue with that person to find out who they are and what they are, and along with introducing yourself. It's a part of the becoming familiar with each other. If you just make a decision that this person's going to be the liaison for requester, and they haven't had any dialogue, people, you're in the dark. You're in the dark for a while. It's not fair to you, because the first few months, it's difficult in a liaison situation when you're working with another person because you don't know anybody. So I'd want to make sure that, and that's what happened up in the first sentence tonight, is they came in with an email and a application, and you can read it and see. Then on number 4, guinea pig. If we need a guinea pig for this application process, I have spoken to Value Leadership today and explained the requester appointee application process, and have agreed to render my application to Value Leadership for review, and in turn, I will inquire about Value going forward. So it's a dual thing there. And I think there's applications here within the county or.
We do have applications for our boards.
Right. And what I would do, I would fill out an application, present it to the Value Leadership, and in January, I would report back to you, tell you about the process, how it worked, and I think I've heard Mr. Higdon say that like in Value, you just don't know what it's about. But that application will allow me to go meet with the Value Leadership. They can find out about me, I can find out about them, and I'll come back to you and see if they're going to, if we would agree or disagree for me to be representative or the liaison to that person or to that group. But you've got a situation here where in their email, they have asked, the Value Board asked, one seat accompanied with the email indicated a need for a board liaison tonight due to their first regional meeting being January 9, 23, which is before our next meeting. I think there's some officer selection, things like that. But I don't mind using the process, if it's okay with you, via email, via an application. And I'll get an application, I will take it to the Value Leadership, say, this is who I am. While I'm there, I will find out who they are. And I know a little bit enough just to be dumb about it. It's an opportunity to get to know each other, especially when you're in these regional things. I heard Paul talk about that a while ago at Southwestern. I work with the Southwestern Workforce Development Board, and getting in there without an application, I was just winging it, and you have to do that for a while. But if I'd had a introductory piece, which would be an application, and met with them before I was appointed to the Southwestern Workforce Division, it would have been a big help. So I guess I just need to know how you want to respond to the request from the Value Board. They need one seat accompanied with the email. It was the Value Regional Board, one seat accompanied with the email to Mr. Rowland that a need for board liaison tonight due to their first regional meeting, January 9, 23. However you want to, I talked to them today, and I told them I would volunteer my services to their organization via an application, which would allow me to talk with them, and they could talk with me to see if I even wanted to be a part of it, or if they wanted me to be a part of theirs. And so, I don't know how to
Yeah, I don't know. We talked about putting off the board appointments tonight. We can do them if we want to.
I just didn't know if that.
I know Danny had expressed some desires to work. I think the lady called him too. It's Shelley.
Shelley, yeah.
And I mean, I'm not, I don't have any guidance on this, how you want to do it, or,
It's a regional thing.
yeah, I'm familiar,
It's
she's
not like
presented
being
a number of
close to
times.
home, but
Mental health
it
and,
takes some time. And I don't mind being that, or Mr. Antoine's made some commitments to it, and I just still feel like he would need an application to talk with her, so he could have a dialogue. Or going to any.
So that's gotta be set tonight in order to be.
Well, she's wanting it pointed tonight because their first meeting, but if they don't have if they don't have a board member, their first meeting, it's not going to end their program.
I talked to Shelley and,
You kind of put her off.
I had told her, because I had spoken with you about liaison appointments prior, and expressed to Shelley that it might be January when we did it. So if we need a little more time, we have time.
We need to, have you got one of those drawn up, or application you've talked about?
The
The county has one that we give out for like the planning
Individuals like
board.
we've got here.
Yeah, yes.
You're talking about that same thing?
Yeah. And it's got enough information on there that you can have a dialogue with somebody to introduce yourself and at the same time gather information back from them.
Okay.
I'm interested in getting to know that, but I mean, I don't wanna be appointed to that tonight. I'd like to get to know, like, try to get to understand what's going on with it.
And that's what the application would be for. You know, whenever you move into it, that's what the application would be for, is trying to find out, what is this organization? Do I even wanna be a participant in it? Or is it taking up too much of my time? They in turn may be analyzing you too to see, is this person gonna commit to us? The time and stuff like that. So, I just told them that I would pass it through the group tonight, and if it was an emergency, it had something to do about selecting officers or something like that.
Yeah, they'll elect their chairman and vice chairman at their January meeting, but it's not gonna.
We wouldn't have a vote in it.
Yeah, it's not gonna bankrupt, they're still gonna be providing services. I understand Shelley's position. They wanna keep the ship floating along, but, I think we just put it off till we do our full thing next month. If that's good with you?
Fine with me, I just
All right.
wanted to.
Thank you, Mr. Shields. For some time, it's been a personal desire of.
This is,
You wanna put some of this stuff off? I know everybody's getting late.
No, this is the last item, actually, and this was, we put together a handbook for the commissioners. This will be used moving forward. As new commissioners come on, Tammy's already got them. HR has worked, it's been a goal of Mike's, as he stated here in the agenda packet, for a long time to get this done. We finally got it done. So I would like to thank Tammy and Mike, everybody that put time into this, Lori, Pam, that made this possible, and they've done a great job putting it together. It's something I think that you all can use, and the existing board members alike. Just try to give you a 100,000-foot view of the organization, kind of help you on your way as we start down the road. So that being said, thank you, and if you have any questions, please call us.
Thank you. Thank you all. There's a lot of time in that.
Yes, there is an acknowledgement that you've received it. If you could just sign that in the front cover, just so we can have it on file.
Is this gonna be a requirement?
No, it is not a requirement. No. It's not, Tammy, there's not one in the front cover of Gilda's.
Mr. Higgins.
We'll get y'all one. Just take a look at it.
Take my word on it. We received them. All right, next is the consent agenda, am I right?
Yes, sir.
The consent agenda is draft minutes, budget amendments, tax releases, and copy of that on tax collection. Any commissioner wants to pull anything out of this, there's attached explanations of all those things. There's some pretty interesting amendments in there. What do you do with that settlement, that tax settlement from the solid waste? That's pretty sizable.
That was the insurance settlement for the building that burned.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just appropriating the funds, so that when Chris does, get to the point of putting it out to bid, the funds are appropriated. And we may have to come back after that bid and appropriate some of his fund balance in the interim until we can, get settled up with the insurance. As he stated earlier, they wouldn't send us the full 100% value. They send a depreciated value. Then once we have it, repaired, replaced, then they'll make us whole.
And then the Healthy People, Healthy Carolinians,
That one, I
that was
think it's health,
106.
health department, it's new grant money, so there's no county match there.
Yeah, we should ask Kathy.
150,000, yeah. But they received funds last fiscal year from the Duke Endowment, so this is just an additional allotment of funds from the Duke Endowment for that purpose.
And every month these will be coming through. Lori's looked at them. If she puts them in there, it means she's willing for us to sign off on it and everything's legal and kosher. Any questions, any on this? Then I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right. No more discussion. I'll signify by raising your right hand. You want to go ahead with these appointments, Derek? 2 to the planning board, they're sitting members, and we're just giving them another 4 years. 3 years, Gene Owen and Mark Berry.
The liaison.
Had a healthy discussion, recommend them both.
Second.
Board of Health, or are you gonna?
Board of Health, that is Dr. Vargas is filling the unexpired term of someone who left, forget who it is. But they absolute, I make a motion that we approve the Board of Health's recommendation.
And see, we had another pop up here. We
Pardon?
had on.
Pardon?
We had that one, social, so did we have one on?
Yeah, you had one.
Social service.
DSS board, yeah.
Social services. They have one seat for social services.
Okay.
They added on
And that would be,
How many, is that one?
one. They said it was just one.
you got that one, Derek?
Mike?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Do we need to finish the Board of Health and then we can, and get
Where we're at now, we got a motion.
You made a motion.
Planning board.
Planning Board. Okay, yeah, we're done with Planning Board, but you didn't.
Motion
make
of
a
the Health
about
Board.
of Health.
Second on the Health Board,
I'd say.
John?
And then the VI is the that is the one where,
Let's hold on that, because I'm not sure to know what that is yet. Maybe have to get Shelley but we'll utilize Commissioner Shields' ideas there on that. All right, all in favor?
I'm sorry, now, I
Yeah.
apologize. After the submission of the agenda packet, Patrick Betancourt contacted me, and they had realized that Ann Hyder had served her 3-year term on the Social Services Board from July 1 of 2019 to June 30 of this year. They apologize for the oversight and are asking if Ms. Hyder can be retroactively reappointed from July 1 of 2022 for a 3-year term.
Your liaison. Health board. Oh, no,
Oh,
Roger
that's-
Board.
yeah.
Social services, yeah.
I'll make a motion to that effect.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe.
All right, Derek.
that's what we've been looking for.
Well, it's a little bit longer than I thought. Thank y'all for coming, particularly county employees, and thank the staff for putting this together and encourage us to get through it, and we did. And I will entertain a motion to.
Adjourn.
No, we're going to.
No, we don't know yet.
Oh, don't have a date. Motion to adjourn?
So moved, Chairman.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Go home. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. Excellent.